Skies of Arcadia is one of my favorite games of all time. Not only is it the best JRPG on one console, but it's the best JRPG on two consoles. Debate that if you want, but for me as a JRPG lover who owned both the Dreamcast and the GameCube, Skies of Arcadia was the king. A game that personified the word adventure. It was the adventure of a lifetime. Likeable characters, an imaginative world, fun storyline and amazing battles, it has it all. And I'm gonna take you through it. This video was voted for by my Patreon producers. Yeah, thank you ever so much for allowing me to replay one of my favorite games of all time. I haven't played it in like 15 years, so thank you for giving me that opportunity. And thank you to all my Patreon supporters who believe in me and my dream. They got to watch this video early, they voted for it, they got behind the scenes content, and best of all, they get an exclusive bonus video for each big video that I create. Their bonus video for Skies of Arcadia is Deep Fear, an obscure Sega Saturn game made by Sega themselves. It was Sega's answer to Resident Evil, and it was produced by the same producer as Skies of Arcadia, the late, great Ryoko Kodama. You can watch that right now on patreon.com/abitmorejordan. There's a preview at the end of this video. Skies of Arcadia is a fantasy JRPG with an imagination like no other. Pirates with airships, floating islands littering the world with nothing below them but a deep, inhospitable vortex. It's the age of adventure, of discovery, of pirates with a heart, of an empire looking to conquer every continent under the 6 moons, each of which has its own unique culture, color, and elemental property. Sail the skies, explored unmapped landmasses, battle monsters, even bigger monsters in the adventure of a lifetime. Vyse, the 17-year-old son of the Blue Rogues Captain Dine, is the main hero of this adventure. Along with his childhood friend Aika by his side, they are in the early stages of being part of the Blue Rogues crew upon the Albatross. As the son of an honorable man, the game begins during a seemingly innocuous raid on a Valuan airship that would soon turn the fate of our heroes from stealing from the rich to downright saving the world. Skies of Arcadia itself was originally planned as a Sega Saturn title, although during those early stages it wasn't fully formed into the idea we ended up with. According to the late great producer Ryoko Kodama, she stated in an interview with Kotaku that initially, instead of airships, it was based on trains, but the jump to the Dreamcast with more horsepower inspired the more adventurous feel for airships in the age of discovery. That couldn't have been too far into development since that was in 1999 and Skies of Arcadia launched on the Dreamcast just a year later in 2000. By the way, during the writing of this video, it was announced that the legendary producer Ryoko Kodama passed away earlier this year, which when I saw that news, it made me feel very, very sad, especially in the middle of writing it. And it was just a punch to the gut basically, and it made it very, very difficult to keep writing that day. So yeah, I would like to dedicate this video to her because she was only in her 50s and she had such a profound impact on me with her works. She is better known to people for creating and building the Phantasy Star series, but to me, the impact she had with Skies of Arcadia is second to none. She was an absolute legend and I hope that she rests in peace. That's a bit of a downer, which I'm sure Kodama-san would not approve of because Skies of Arcadia is a game full of hope and optimism. So let's try to keep that up in her honor. It was developed by Overworks with the staff who worked on the Phantasy Star and Sakura Wars series, which is some solid pedigree, especially when it comes to RPGs. But in my opinion, Skies of Arcadia was their greatest game, perhaps Sega's greatest game of all time. If you're into RPGs, of course, I'm sure Sonic fans would not agree. But why? Well, it's time to go on the adventure of a lifetime. A game of exploration, discovery, of swashbuckling heroes with a never say die attitude. Now a lot of you out there have advised me to either A, make shorter videos, or B, split the videos into different parts. However, the original inspiration for this channel was just really long form content. It's what I wanted to do. Obviously, outside of the Patreon, I don't actually make money from this since I'm not monetized yet. Yeah, the channel hasn't quite taken off like the airships and Skies of Arcadia, so I'm mostly doing it because it's what I enjoy. I get it may not be for everyone, so if you're only here for the analysis, the review of sorts, then skip to the time code here. There's also a timestamp in the description. That's the true retrospective. However, before then, I enjoy taking people through the story. It's RPG story time. Maybe you don't have time to play it, nor want to watch a complete Let's Play. Well, I am here for you to explain the story in a succinct fashion, the gameplay beats, and hopefully entertain you in some small way. Yes, there will be analysis in here, but the bulk of it will be in the second half of the video. Let's take a look at Skies of Arcadia. Skies opens with the scene straight out of Star Wars, the original one. A small flying vessel being pursued and hounded by a large destroyer-type ship. It's a great shot because it instantly gives you a sense of the power this force has, whomever they may be. The twilight of the very early morning gives a menacing vibe to the situation. Her ship is struck and she's taken on board while helplessly unconscious. You get a quick look at this Alfonso fella, who you can tell by his name alone, he's a bit of a ponce, wafting his hair and concerned only about the rewards, but his party is about to be spoiled as his ship takes a hit. The Blue Rogues are pirating the battleship. We get a pretty badass introduction to one of our main heroes, Vyse, who reveals his allegiance. He's instantly likable, he's confident but not an arsehole, which is what usually accompanies that trait. He's accompanied by his best friend Aika, who once again perfectly introduces the big allegiances here. The cheerful, badass Blue Rogues pitted against the domineering Empire, or at least so they appear. The first battle begins, which of course is piss easy. Just attack and you're good to go. I wouldn't call it an introduction as it doesn't cover anything the battle system truly has to offer. Press A to win. It doesn't cover the stamina, the magic, the special moves, none of those vital parts, which I'm sure I'll get to down the line. I don't know because I haven't finished writing yet. With that battle finished, there are more waves of men. Of course there are. This battleship isn't going to have just a couple of grunts, but perhaps an even more stylish introduction comes as one of the big mouth soldiers gets a bullet to the head. The game's rated teen in the US and 11+ in the UK, so I'm pretty sure it didn't penetrate his skull. But here we are introduced to a badass pirate leader, Dine, Vyse's father. You are the son of the captain. You're tasked with cutting the engines while the other pirates deal with the soldiers. This is the introduction dungeon as such. You have a treasure chest plonked right there in front of you to tell you, look, this is something you need to take a look at. Because to be fair, it is hardly a booty-worthy chest. It's very pragmatic in its design. No jewels and shit pouring out or gold-rimmed oak or whatever. You will have your first personal encounter with Alfonso, who just gets increasingly weaselly as the game goes on. Yeah, unfortunately you can't behead him right here and now, as that wouldn't be fun. You see the fainted girl in his assistant's arms. You'll have a second fight which gives you a bit more room to breathe to show off the stamina and how it enables you to do the special moves, which I didn't bother doing for this fight, so hang on a tick. You pursue the ponce into the hangar to see what a truly despicable man he is. Embarrassed by the loss of his ship, he makes a scapegoat of the vice captain and throws him to his death, planning to report it was his betrayal that caused this situation. Is this dude cliched? So far, yes. But he does have a little bit of depth to him, about as much as a pub urinal, but still a little bit. You can see Vyse is massively pissed about this with a genuinely angry face. You can see he's a super honorable guy. Unlike Alfonso, who cowardly escapes as he lets his war bull come to fight them. One, who the freak keeps a bull on an airship? I mean, where are you going to take it for walks? I mean, where's it going to take a dump? It's massive. And two, why are you calling it Antonio? Does it make great pizza? Compared to the previous battles, this is actually quite tough because he hits hard and can hit both of you at the same time. This is where you'll probably make use of the other battle system mechanics outside of your normal attack. You have this stamina meter at the top, and every turn it recovers slightly. Your normal attack doesn't use any stamina, so that's useful to help it build up. Or you can use focus, which increases it even more. What does use the stamina, however, is the magic and the S move. You'll need to use magic in this battle, maybe even the first turn. Aika should be able to heal you one by one at the cost of some stamina and magic points. This is a sticking point for the magic throughout the game, but I'll get to that more deeply in the analysis section, since, to make a short point of it, magic is quite compromised in this game. Just like my relationships before I got married, it takes more than it can give. If you save enough stamina, you'll have enough to do the S move, the only one Vyse currently has, Cutlass Fury, a strong special attack probably enough to finish the battle. These are super important for the game, which encourages their use heavily. With Alfonso gone and his bull exploding, as they're known to do, you look back at this mysterious girl with unusual clothing. She wakes up with Vyse and Aika standing over her. I love the direction in this game. The characters properly introduce themselves, reassuring the girl that she's safe now. Her name is Fina, but the mystery only deepens as she doesn't understand what an air pirate is. Something shocking to the two blue rogues, everyone knows what pirates are. She's definitely not from around these parts, that's for sure. But it is the perfect isekai plot, just without being the main protagonist. You perfectly get to introduce the world and the lore without it being awkward informational dumps. They explain blue rogues are the goody two-shoes of pirates, the Robin Hoods, stealing from the rich and, okay, not quite giving it to the poor. They keep it for themselves still. I mean, they're pirates, not philanthropists, but they only attack bad people, so it's fine. Compared to black pirates who attack everyone, basically real pirates. With duties to attend to, Vyse is ordered by his father to take the helm of the ship and pilot it to their home base on Pirate Isle. You get to pilot an airship. How friggin' cool is that? As a kid, when I played the demo and I saw this, I just turned to my dad and said, "Dad, buy this now." And we did. We went to the shop right that second. We got the bus, the number 19 bus, we went to Meadowall and we bought it. And I was a very happy boy. Sky pirates or air pirates is a concept that takes the coolness of pirates and just massively ramps up the badassery. Everyone hates water, right? Well, how about we remove the watery aspect from the pirates and give them no boundaries? Let them fly in the sky. It's a wonderful concept, and Skies of Arcadia is the best, like 100% the best example of air pirates represented in any kind of media. Something sorely neglected. Welcome to the world map, by the way. Yeah, there ain't no walking around on a world map, you're sailing the skies. There ain't no roads where we're going. Seeing the vast open skies for the first time, moving in every dimension, even up and down, it's a thrilling experience for the possibilities alone. Yeah, there are random battles. Yeah, there are too many of them, but not enough to take away the wondrous feeling of adventure and sailing into the unknown. But the adventure will have to wait a bit first because your dad told you to go home. Your mum called and said your bath's ready. When you arrive on Pirate Isle, you get a wonderful cinematic of how the pirates operate. A seemingly innocent village hiding a layer beneath. Don't ask me how the frig they constructed this thing, best not to ask. The islands are floating in the sky, it's not important. I love how expressive the faces can be here. Rather than shaping their faces with polygons, they're actual sprites, I think, which makes them easily changeable and way more expressive than any of the games of the era who went full polygon. Even more so than Final Fantasy X. Pirate's Isle is a nice place with plenty of personality. You get to meet my favourite character, Mabel. She's a hot alcoholic pirate. Who would not be impressed? You get a quick look at the pirating life and you're immediately in love with it. You feel like you belong here. They even have a tavern underground, for God's sake. Before you can settle in too much, your daddy has serious business with you. He demands that you bring the girl up to his quarters. Get your filthy mind out of it. He's an honourable man, but he needs to protect his crew. He can't be handling hot property. And yeah, Fina is hot, which is fine, but I mean, she's a wanted person of the Empire. Having her around could attract too much attention. Which is right, he's a nice guy, but he's also responsible. He's not the leader for nothing. Fina refuses to speak about why she's doing what she's doing, where she's from, or what her plan is. She might be shy and naive about this world, but she's strong-willed. But instead of making her walk the plank, Dine lets this one go after seeing she seems like she has good intentions. You now get to explore the island as you desire, which I highly recommend. You find all the little secret chests, because if you want to see everything the game has to offer, you need to grab them all pretty much. And Dine, if you speak to him again, gives you some great words of advice, which you wouldn't think is as important as it actually is. He tells you to be adventurous as possible. Be a badass, don't back down, inspire people. You won't think this is important, but really, it is. You need to adhere to this advice to get the very best out of Skies of Arcadia. Going outside, you can explore the small pirate isle to your heart's desire. There's not much to see, but you can get a very homely feeling. The game does a wonderful job of world building due to all the interactive things. All the flavor text adds a lot to making this world real. If you see something in the environment, the chances are you can press A and see some comments from Vyse about it. It goes a long way. As someone who's supposed to be writing flavor text for an upcoming RPG based on the Switchwatch team, there's a lot that I can learn from Skies of Arcadia. You don't need to check every single thing because that would slow the game to a halt, but you know, once in a while, smell the roses or someone's linen. Actually, don't smell someone's hanging linen because I'm pretty sure that's a crime in most countries. You've got to steal it first, that's the key. It's a small place, have a chat with the folk here, have a chat with your mum. But the most important feature, in fact, I'm pretty sure it will become a tourist attraction in the future, Pirate Isle's comically tall ladder. When it comes to ladders in video games, this is possibly the king of them. I've heard there's a comically long one in one of the Metal Gear Solid games, but I don't remember that. I only remember Pirate Isle. The ladder that could. I'm sure when he was young, everyone told him he was crazy, foolish for thinking he could become so big. Well, it just goes to show, never give up on your dream to reach the stars. What an underdog story. In fact, Skies almost has an obsession with long ladders. I was even thinking of doing a top 10 ladders in Skies of Arcadia, but then I realized I've got shit to do in life. And yeah, I want my daughter to be proud of me, not embarrassed. As you climb to the top after you meet your mom, you witness the beautiful sunset, but something's a bit different. As you mull on your sense of adventure, you witness moonstones crash into the nearby island. Moonstones are a valuable commodity in Arcadia. They are used to power airships and machinery. They are this world's coal or oil, but much rarer, but longer lasting. Vyse and Aika plan to head over there tomorrow to try and see if they can scrounge some for the pirates, so that's where you and Aika head off for your first real dungeon. And it's a proper dungeon at that. Before that, however, your father gives you a purple moonstone, which I should briefly elaborate that you can equip to your weapons. They sort of act like elemental alignments that deal greater or lesser damage depending on the elemental alignment of the monsters. It's surprisingly unclear about which elements are best against others, probably it would explain in the manual, but if you don't have that, you should just get a feel for it. It's not a huge difference, about 10% extra or less damage either way, but it can mean the difference between winning and losing a battle. Thankfully, you can switch mid-battle, which is something I didn't take advantage of as a kid because I was about as tactical as a slug, and also I never bothered with that in other RPGs. Who knew changing equipment freely in battle would be a great advantage? Anyways, Shrine Island is your first proper dungeon. You can see the blast the moonstone caused in the shrine, and you've got to retrieve it. It's best you change your weapon elementals to purple here, and I have to say, I was always fascinated about the visual changes to the weapons. I mean, look, don't tell me that ain't a lightsaber, which as a 10-year-old, that was friggin' badass. Look, a Mace Windu! The first dungeon is kinda linear. The basic concept is to try and lower the water levels by opening key doors and draining the water out. It's not a tough or puzzling area, but you should try to level up and get used to the typing matchups to make an easy boss battle coming up. With only 2 of you in the party, one of Sky's little tricks is that sometimes random encounters will throw an absolute ton of enemies at you, which can make the battles really slow to watch all their animations one by one, and perhaps even difficult. At this point, you can use magic, but like I said, it takes more than it can give. But you'll unlock S moves by finding moonberries in chests or from enemies, and Aika is an absolute hero early on because she learns an attack called Alpha Storm, which can engulf quite a few enemies in one if you target it well. Take advantage of it. As you get to the bottom, you'll meet up with a guardian of the shrine, awakened after thousands of years in slumber. He's not particularly difficult, but you have to make sure you defend at the right time before he unleashes his special attack. Thankfully, he's nice enough to give you advance notice. If you manage to defeat him, somehow you can pick up this moonstone that probably weighs a literal ton. Plus it's glowing like it's radioactive, so I'm pretty sure Vyse is going to sprout an extra head after finding this. With your booty in your hands, it's ready to head home, feeling rather pleased for yourself. But something is wrong. While you're away, Valua attacks your home, and you're introduced to Galcian and Ramirez, 2 badass dudes who play a huge part in the story. They are going to raze Pirate Isle to the ground, all for the girl. Why would they destroy a whole village just for Fina? Pirate Isle is smouldering, burnt to a crisp without a soul in sight. But as we know, there's depth to this island, and underground you find the women and children. The men have been taken to be interrogated and executed for piracy. One of the things I love about Skies of Arcadia is the never-ending optimism and swashbuckling adventurism. Despite insurmountable odds of rescuing them, Vyse and Aika will always believe they can do something, and they never feel down about how difficult or impossible it may seem. they never give up or cry about the issues at hand. Like I said before, listen to your dad's advice, be as brave as you can be with these choices. If you choose the right one, it will give you a boost to your pirate rating, which is important for 100% completion, if you care about that. Meanwhile, we get more info about Galcian. He's the Empress's #1 general, and Fina has been hunted for supposedly very good reasons. He knows a great deal about Fina, that she is from the Silver Civilization. So mysterious. And it's time to go rescue her and the Blue Rogues. As you make your way to the capital city of Valua, sailing the skies in your little dinky ship, you'll notice visibility starts to get bad with thick fog enveloping you. Suddenly, a large mass comes beside your ship, an arch whale, and Big Moby Dick is here to spoil your party. Just like that dodgy uncle who only turns up at weddings and spends most of his time trying to get off with the bride. And just like that uncle, you wake up the next day seemingly worse for wears, not even in your own bed. A grumpy old dude scorns you for ruining his chance at taking down this whale that he calls Drachma. He is well pissed. He's been chasing that whale for years. Luckily, he managed to catch you as your ship was destroyed, otherwise this would have been a very short game. This dude is called Drachma. Thanks, Drachma, and although he may appear slightly grumpy here, he is in fact, well, he is incredibly grumpy and doesn't take any nonsense, especially with meddling kids as yourself. As you help out in the ship, you eventually come to an agreement that he'll take you as far as Sailor's Isle and no further. Not great for two kids with no money and have just lost their ship. As you take control of the Little Jack, the name of the ship, you head for the Sailor's Island, battling the random fights along the way, and Drachma, he lends a hand too. Yeah, he's joined your party as a fighter. Unlike Vyse and Aika, he's a tank. Slow, often misses, but when he pimp slaps you, boy, you are heading back to the birth canal. You can't really explore too much for the time being since there are various walls of wind, rocks, and plot-related cockblocks, but before you get to Sailor's Island, you are interrupted by an optional side quest that was shoehorned into the GameCube port. There is a doctor and a little girl with a weird chicken thing. If you find moonfish, you can come back here and feed it to the little chick, and it will grow each time, and it will also spit out useful items. I'm not going to dwell on this one too much since it is optional, but I will say, if you want one of the best boss fights in this game, it is something you need to look into. Plus there's some really nice items you'll definitely want, and some nice backstory as well. I don't want to spoil anything, but don't worry, the chicken does not go on a murderous rampage. He's not the boss. Sailor's Island is the first piece of major civilization you'll come across in this game. And by major, because it's from the year 2000, it contains like 6 buildings, but hey, they're all kind of important. It's a nice taste and gives you a feel for the world. There are some rather unique people in here. My favorite is Polly, not sure why. There's the Afro Salesman, Shopkeepers, and the Adventurers Guild, which you can earn money from finding discoveries in the world. Again, this is an optional thing, but for me, this adds so much to the world building. There are discoveries similar to those found in real life. There's pirate seafaring mythology, and there's also just some weird fun stuff that flesh Arcadia out into a fascinating world. Plus, you get paid for it. So, you're in a bit of a dilemma. No money, no ship, and your dad's about to get his head lopped off. The goal here is to try and persuade Drachma to take you. Drachma hints that he wants a big cannon, a cannon big enough to blow a hole in the whale blubber. So maybe you can use that to your advantage. After you've explored a bit, talked to a few of the special people around, you want to head to the shipwright who heard of a weapon big enough to potentially take on Drachma. And coincidentally, that person with the goods is in Valua, the place you want to go. With this info in your pocket, it's time to let Drachma know and hopefully let him take you with him to the place you need to go. But there is one issue, the Valuan passport. They won't let you in without one, and forging one yourself doesn't seem reasonable. This isn't buying a 6-pack at the local off-license, this is Endor moon mission type thing. So having a wander about town, you'll meet with a trader who is willing to give you his if you escort him home. He's scared of pirates, and rightly so, since when you're sailing him safely to Nasir, the Red Moon Kingdom, Baltor the Black Pirate is on the prowl. And let me introduce to you one of the coolest aspects of Skies of Arcadia: ship battles. Oh my god, I was already sold on the game by the sheer concept alone, the world, the characters, whatever, but this This is the thing that took Skies to the next level. This is a minigame of sorts, but it's very, very prominent, and it's also not a minigame because they take quite a long time to do. It's a JRPG battle between two airships. They circle around each other in dramatic fashion, and you have to choose what actions each character in your party takes. It's very much like a normal battle with attacks, magic, items, and the focus mechanic to boost up your stamina. The difference here, however, is that you can choose which order you want your team to act in, and you can also get a glimpse of what kind of attacks the enemy will do. Green means they will either do nothing offensive or do very light damage, yellow means moderate damage, while red means I hope you've written your will already. These fights are far more tactical than standard fights and can be a war of attrition. Usually there's some gimmick thrown in here too, which I'll get to that when it comes to it, but it's safe to say I love ship battles. The dynamic camera and ship movement, oh my god, it's just awesome. And I know it has its detractors, mostly from those people who are vacant of feelings. They are quite slow, but I find them epic. You should manage to take down Baltor without too much hassle, since it's an introduction, and with the merchant away, you have your passport in hand. You can actually head back to Sailor's Isle to claim your pirate bounty, which is another feature of Legends, extra boss battles for extra dosh. But now, it's time to head to Valua. Valua is a dark, menacing place. I mean, sure, it gives that cliched evil bad guy's lair feel, but there's actually good reason for that, since it's under the watch of the Yellow Moon, which causes an endless storm in the region. The land is barren, aside from the city. Protecting the city, however, is a giant impenetrable wall that only opens up twice a day. Your passport works, and the gate rotates to open up. You can see the almost comical show of power. Somebody ain't messing around. Cannons out the arse. Logistically, it doesn't make sense. According to the vibe I get, this rotates slowly, like perhaps up to an hour to fully turn around. So tactically, in battle, if you're defending with your wall on one side but want to go to the offensive, that's going to be the slowest counterattack in history. Plus, while it's taking so long to turn, enemy ships could just fly inside. But hey, who am I to judge? Military, they have the might and the money, but you can't say they have a whole lot of competence. Speaking of which, we meet the admirals of the Empire. Galcian is the first admiral, and you get introduced to them one by one. Alfonso, Gregorio, Vigoro, Beliza, and Di Loco. Somewhat pleasingly, Alfonso is stripped of his command right there and then for being a deceptive little runt and coward. Galcian shows he does not mess around and has no time for incompetence. They seem like a random bunch of people, perhaps erring on tropes, but they all have their important part of the story, and many of them you'll be seeing quite often. You're introduced to the awfulness of Valua. This is a city of polarity, where the poor live in darkness and the rich live a life of luxury. A standard trope, just look at Midgar in Final Fantasy VII for example, but here is perhaps more extreme since the rich don't really seem to even need to work and care nothing except visiting the opera or what kind of glassware will suit their next dinner party. The slums, they can barely afford to eat. In fact, one of the NPCs say that they eat black bread. I'm not sure if it's actual black bread or their mum gave them a piece of coal and lied to them telling them, it's yummy bread. That's what my mum used to do. She told me the Marmite was blueberry jam. Never forget, Mom. Never. It's an overly depressing place, as you can imagine. As you're walking, you'll bump into a snotty Scottish kid. I don't know if he's Scottish, he just looks like it. He's got a bit of an attitude, but he's also a streetwise kid. At the hotel, before the team rest up, that little grot bag Marco overhears their plan, which is not good. They can't risk getting caught. So, then you have a very unique segment where you chase after him on the rooftops, and you can choose your route, almost like a quick time event. This never happens again in the game, and I'm not sure what happens if you choose a route other than the one I did. I assume you'd have to try again, but I really don't know. You actually feel sorry for him since he doesn't care whether you kill him or not. He has given up on his awful life here. This dude lives in the sewers. I appreciate the fact he wants to get out of the way, but damn, how about a shed or something? Rather conveniently, he tells you the sewers lead towards the Colosseum, where your comrades are going to be a head short of a hat shop display. Vyse gives one of his handful of really encouraging speeches, telling Marco to stop being pathetic, don't give up, try to make yourself better. Vyse does this a handful of times and it really shows why he becomes such a great leader in the game. And by the way, third game in a row in the sewers. You can't tell me it's not a trope. Thankfully, it's a pretty straightforward dungeon. There's nothing gimmicky or maze-like about it. You just plow through to the destination, fighting many a battle along the way. This dungeon is home to a surprisingly disturbing enemy called the Mind Stealer, which would not have been out of place in a horror game, even like Silent Hill. It seems to be like a giant insect attached to the head of a human and then controlling it. It's horrible to think about, having a bug invading my skull, hollowing me out, and then using my husk as its new home. It's gross. I love it. The boss of this dungeon is also gross, but in a slightly different way. Mildly more pleasant. It attacks you by puking on you, like right on top of your head. It doesn't even have the decency to do it below the waist. While it appears to be just a generic mutant blob, I do love the nice touch of having skulls floating around its transparent stomach. He can digest everything but the skulls. A couple have been there so long they've started growing moss. It's a little bit difficult to be honest, and that's only compounded by a follow-up boss. Yet 2 in 1. Because climbing up the ladder, it's time to go rescue Daddy, kicking the guards out of the way and leading them to the sewers. You have to take on the Executioner. But not only him, but he's got 2 spellcasters at the side of him to add to this extra tasty fight. He can hit really, really hard, and he has a lot of health, and it's far more trouble if you're an absolute tool like myself and didn't heal after the amorphous blob. But winning sees a nice cutscene of the crowd cheering and Vyse absolutely making the most of it. But anyways, it is time to escape. But someone is missing. Your piratey friends are all safe, but Fina, where is Fina? Turns out she's at the palace, and you've got to go there while everyone else gets to safety. You and Aika go alone to help her. As you make your way there, you get another scene with Marco, which is even more sad about losing his mother and father. He doesn't want you to risk your life and die, but Vyse once again gives a rousing monologue about why he has to do what he's doing. Vyse is an ace guy. We then get a glimpse of Theodora, the Empress of Valua, a crazy lady who plans to rule the world and needs to use Fina to accomplish it. We also get a peek at her son Enrique, who seems at odds with his mother's plans. That is a foreshadowing for later. Fina is resolute in not helping her, especially when ancient weapons, the Gygus, are mentioned. Theodora is genuinely nuts. One might say she is up her own arse. I do need to mention Galcian, who's just standing there dozing off, which I'm not surprised considering that robe he's wearing. This dude is snug as a bug. I bet he's all warm and cozy wearing that. It's adorable. What a cozy little fella. You get a small segment in the upper city where you can talk to some rich people who make you want to puke, perhaps even think about destroying the entire world. Sadly, it's only brief, as you quickly find Fina getting forced on a train, and it's time for a heist. Perhaps this gives some kind of glimpse of what the original plan of this game was going to be, fighting on top of trains. It's a fairly cool set piece, almost a bit terrifying as Galcian joins the back of the train to give chase. This is like having Darth Vader chasing you or something, menacingly walking slowly to take you down. He's not one for sprinting. I don't blame him for a man of his age, he's probably got dodgy knees. Once you've out-jogged him, you'll bust open the door to grab Fina, who's very emotional at you, going to all this trouble to rescue her. But it is not long before Galcian has caught up with you. He probably left his Zimmer frame outside. This is trouble. When the big daddy boss comes at this time, you know there's no way to actually win. We've got 30 hours of the game to go, and just as things are about to get spicy, the little Jack blows a hole in the train. Sure, he could have blown our heroes to bits, but hey, it was worth the risk. But the escape is not over yet, since some Valuan cruisers are on your tail, so it's time for another ship battle. But this time, you'll see that the little Jack has hit puberty, and he's firmly, my how you've grown Jack. He's got a new special attack called the Harpoon Cannon, and it's one of the most ridiculous badass things in gaming. You're going to be relying on this bad boy for all your epic moments for the near future. While it was designed to skewer arch whales, you'll be stretching its usage to airships and other giant monsters. It technically makes absolutely zero sense, but when this happens, oh boy, it's glorious. Hearing the phrase Harpoon Cannon Fire still makes the hairs on my arms stand to attention. it's not the only thing standing to attention. When that's over, there's a tight escape as a giant gate closes. Pretty cinematic, just as the game always tries to be. Massively appreciate the effort these guys went to. It's something that shows Skies of Arcadia truly was a AAA RPG for the time. And now that Fina is so indebted to you, she's finally ready to tell you about her mission. She's the perfect exposition tool while also being a great character. Many generations ago, thousands of years in the past, the world was divided into 6 civilizations, each represented by one of the 6 moons. She is part of the mythical Silver Civilization. As they all went through technological revolution, their brand new power corrupted them and led to war. Trying to destroy each other, they created giant monsters, the Gygas. But when things got a bit too much, the rains of destruction came down, the moons taking the nonsense into their own hands. The world was set to 0 again. These Gygas, now dormant, can be reawakened by the moon crystals. Not moonstones, crystals. There's one for each of the moons. 6 moon crystals hidden around the world, and Valua wants to grab them to wield their power, ensuring total control over the world. It's Fina's mission to grab them first, and that's why she was nabbed by the Empire. Rather unexpectedly, despite being incredibly secretive and resolute in her solo mission, she requests Vyse and Aika join her. Of course, being the adventurous type, you say yes. You also get introduced into Kupal, Fina's malleable pet, who also acts as her weapon for the game. Now, most JRPGs these days would need to get in that kawaii, possibly wise-cracking comic relief character from a cute monster pet, but Skies of Arcadia is too good for that. Kupal keeps his trap shut. Yeah, he's not a gimmicky mascot, he's just there looking cute and that's it. He's no wise-cracking knobhead. Yeah, he's not a gimmicky mascot or anything, he's just there. And Fina's little weapon has a very unique evolution to it. Instead of buying weapons and replacing Kupal with some fancier, shinier mascot and making him turn to the bottle, you feed him special things which make him get stronger. Think of them as rare candies from Pokemon. And just like Pokemon, once in a while he will evolve into all manner of increasingly strong forms, including spears and swords. These chams are found as hidden items on the floor, and there's an indicator bleeping when you get near one, kind of like the moonfish, and you should definitely get all of them if possible, because otherwise, if you don't feed Kupal, Fina won't be much use in a fight. Before setting out on your brand new mission, you have to say goodbye to Mummy and Daddy. I do find it quite weird that pretty much the only person to not have a name is your mum. She's called Vyse's mum. Doesn't she deserve a name or something? Anyway, she looks like Janice to me, so I always call her Janice. The plan is to head towards Nasir under the red moon. It's the closest one that isn't Valua. Yeah, don't fancy going back there for the time being, considering you just escaped from it. Now that the little Jack has been equipped with the harpoon cannon, he can go through rock formations, especially the ones that protect the town of Maramba. Funny thing is, anytime you get to a new kingdom, Vyse and Aika always speculate about what they will see, with Aika's imagination going wild and showing a unique comical CG. With the red moon, she imagines Vyse's hair will set on fire. With Fina's knowledge of the Temple of Pyrin, they need to find information about its location in Maramba. But as you disembark the little Jack, it suddenly takes off with Drachma abandoning you. I remember hating this dude right at this moment, but really, think about it for a second. This guy has got a whale to catch. At no point did he sign up to grab moon crystals or find temples. I'm gonna make I stand with Drachma trending on Twitter. He's kinda right, but it is frustrating to be stranded while on such an important mission. So now, you've gotta find a ride before you can save the world. Maramba isn't a place that's important in the grand scheme of things. You're only required to come here for this one time, and there's not a whole lot of reason to come back aside from 2 optional things later in the game. But I love it. I love the whole aesthetic. It's exotic. It's fascinating to check all the houses to see what they look like and what they're getting up to. It even has like a pointless camel riding section where you walk between sections of the town. It doesn't add anything to the gameplay, but it fully enhances the world building. So where do you need to go when you need to take a ride somewhere? The pub! Drunk people are always the easiest to persuade. Probably the cheapest too. A couple of beers will do the trick. And I guess in Arcadia, drink piloting isn't that much of a crime, and there's not really any police to stop you. But let's just say there's something far more interesting in this pub than drunken sailors. There's a rather funny scene in the pub as Aika laments their current situation and Vyse is just gawking at the belly dancer who, well, I don't want to boast, but as you all know, I am an expert belly dancer and this is embarrassing. But let's face it, ain't no one looking at the techniques. Aika's kind of pissed at Vyse's unsubtle staring, and Fina, being as naive as always, makes a funny comment too. It's rather endearing. But it seems the dancer has taken a liking to you and comes over. Like a slightly drunk divorcee in a nightclub, she's a bit too forceful in wanting to help you. It is kind of suspicious. She's called Belina, and will meet you with her ship tomorrow. Belina? Nah, she's just a sexy dancer. Let's trust her. The next day, you meet her at the docks. Aika is naturally suspicious and asks to know why she is so willing to help you. At which point, you get a rather sad story from Belina saying her father was a soldier for Nasia who died in the war between that kingdom and Valua decades before, leaving Belina and her family in poverty. Her mother died shortly afterwards and she was left to fend for herself. Now, she wants revenge. Now it's time to find the Temple of Pyrene, which stands out like a sore thumb. You can't tell me you were the first people to find this giant pyramid. Regardless, Belina is going to wait for you outside. Doesn't want to get her pretty face caved in by the monsters that lay inside. I don't blame her. The main gimmick of Pyrene Temple is rolling these cylindrical things to navigate and hit switches. You also have some Indiana Jones-like sections with rolling boulders. You'll be fighting tough monsters in tombs and over lava flows. Man, those Egyptians dug deep. They must have been S-rank slaves to do this. It's pretty cool to be raising the lava flow, which is a nice different take from the usual water raising mechanic seen in every game ever. The enemies are kind of tough, but the boss, well, the boss isn't very tough. It's a lava worm, but he doesn't hit particularly hard. You can easily keep up your health with magic and items. So, it's time to pick up your first crystal, and I love the fact you use the corpse of your enemy as a bridge over the lava. That's the kind of disrespect I can get behind. And there is the beautiful looking moon crystal. When it comes to shiny ass crystals in video games, this is top tier. It eclipses Ocarina of Time's spiritual stones for me. They're gorgeous, and the music accompanies it is just, it's actually very Zelda-like. Just listen to it. You can't tell me that doesn't sound like Zelda. Vyse boldly claims Valua will have to take it off his cold, dead body before it hands it over to them. As you make your way out, Belina is waiting for you, and as you let her take a look at the crystal, she says, Lord Galcian will be pleased. Because she's not a sexy dancer, she's not Belina, she's Beliza! No way! She just rotated the Z to an N. Whoa! Yes, she was the Valuan general after all, shock horror. No wonder she was a shit dancer. She is the general who excels in subterfuge, trickery. But she wasn't lying to you about her past. She really was brought up in tragedy, but her father was a Valuan soldier, not a Nasia soldier. With the crystal in hand, she sticks it in the pedestal to summon Recruitment, the Red Moon Gygus, a four-headed monstrosity. Just as you're about to get wiped out by a laser beam, the Gygus takes a hit to the head, putting it off target just in time. Drachma is back. It's time to battle the Gygus on the Little Jack. Yeah, this little rinky-dink fishing vessel is supposed to take on this giant walking behemoth. Recruitment doesn't attack often, but when he does, he packs a massive punch. You can see when that's going to happen with the red markings in the battle. Just like the previous cutscene, if you hit his head just before he attacks, you can put it off target and it can miss, which is great because you're going to get absolutely mullered if you don't. You'll become very aware that when you attack him, you're doing almost zero damage. It's too strong and you're too weak. There has to be another way to win. Well, if you can't take down the giant, how about taking the person controlling it, Beliza? It's time to take on her flagship, the Lynx. No, it's not a failed handheld console, It's a Lynx that's a fairly strong ship that's packed with magic. She's got magic to boost her attacks and also weaken you. She is strong, as you can see on the attack timeline. She's always packing hit after hit. She's the Michael Jackson of the airship world. She's very aggressive, and you'll be on the back foot at least until you get the chance to ready your harpoon cannon, which should completely wipe her out, and stopping the Gygus in the process. Beliza, being an honourable woman, hands the crystal over to you. You steal her engines, allowing the little Jack to pass through strong headwinds to the next location, the green moon of the mythical Ix'taka. It's time to adventure through the South Winds, a tumultuous area full of heavy crosswinds. I know this is a place where many people actually decided to not be friends with Skies of Arcadia anymore, especially back in the Dreamcast era, because you move super slowly through here, and yet the random battles, oh, they don't let up. It doesn't help that the monsters here enjoy using Eternum magic, which is an instant KO to one character. It is cheap and it's annoying, but once you finish the battle, there's this brief period that you can't control your ship and the wind pushes you back a bit. You couple all this together and you've got yourself a pretty frustrating time. It's a test of patience, that is for sure. I can't remember if you can equip the white map accessory right now, but if you can, do it, because that reduces encounters, and you want that for the rest of the game, I promise. Eventually, you'll arrive in Ix'taka, where Aika's imagination goes off on one again, imagining fruit-laden forests and giant scary monsters. You can tell this area has taken inspiration from South America. During the Age of Discovery, Europeans explored and encountered the tribes, and let's just say, weren't very nice to them. Now, I'm not going to downplay what Europeans did to them, but this is mildly reflected here in Arcadia, since, although it's been a secret to most, Valua already has a presence here, and they have enslaved many locals into working at the mines to dig up valuable moonstones. It was even mentioned in a cutscene previously that Alfonso was being restationed here as a punishment. After having a look around and getting into a few scrapes with new kinds of monsters, you'll stumble upon Horteca, the main town that you can visit. It's an interesting place built within the trees. It's populated by tribespeople who aren't particularly interested in you once you tell them the truth of where you came from, same as the other bad people. You've got to find some fuel since the south winds really used up a lot, so it's time to try and explore this place, which is kind of difficult because it's all over the shop, full of ladders, poles, and even slides. It's a pretty funky place. You'll even come across a crashed airship from the north whose captain has been taken by the Valuans, but the remaining crew are happy to help out fellow blue rogues by sparing some moonstones. That's nice of them. When you meet with the elder of the village, who has magnificent eyebrows by the way, secondary only to me. I need to get some of those fancy clips though. He tells you of the plight of the people, scared of Valua with their fire-breathing machines destroying the forests, taking slaves to use in the mines. The elder believes that you are good and tells you where to find the king, who may know where the green moon crystal is. As you're approaching the king's hut, however, you get a whiff of something off, and no, it's not Captain Drachma airing his underwear, it's a Valuan flagship, Diloco's Chameleon, with a flamethrower equipped. He's my kind of guy, fully approve. Diloco lives up to his name, an unhinged genius. He's the inventor of destruction, but crazed beyond control. He lacks much depth, he just likes causing chaos with his inventions of destruction. You can't let this happen, so it's time to take him on. Personally, I'm rooting for him, but whatever. He's not too difficult, but make sure you concentrate fire on the critical hit markers. Due to the different types of weapons like torpedoes and sub-cannons, you can make all your hits land on the same turn for maximum effect. And of course, don't neglect your harpoon cannon. Unlike the Lynx, he won't go down in one, so it's a much longer battle, and boy does he like that flamethrower. Who can blame him? But I think as long as you're careful with your health, you should be able to take him down. You'll see the first of a running gag of Diloco going nuts and then passing out from, I don't know, overt craziness, and then his vice captain shaking him to bring him to his senses. Afterwards, you'll meet the king who tells you the moon crystal will be in the lost city of Rixis, but only his high priest may know the legend to its location. But unfortunately, he's locked up in the mining facility. Looks like it's time for a heist, this time for the greatest treasure of them all, a pervy old priest. More on that in a second. It's time to visit the next dungeon, the mines. As you sneak into the mines, both DeLoco and Alfonso are there, the former of which is alerted to your presence. For some reason, this mine is full of traps, and seriously, it is. DeLoco was also clever to do the opposite of what people would think, because the steps with the X on them are the correct ones. The circles will be the traps and send you back to the beginning of the dungeon. Just pay attention. It is a little bit annoying, and the dungeon itself is surprisingly long. Halfway through, you'll end up bumping into Sentime, who's the captain of the Rex ship in Hortuka. He'll help you out by making the elevators work again, where you can continue your journey to finding the priest. He also says he'll disarm some of the traps for you, so that's nice. Eventually, you will find the priest Ispa, who, as I stated, is a dirty old man who pervs on Fina and Aika, but it's fine because he's so jovial, he can get away with it. He doesn't have a Twitter account, so it doesn't matter. I also love Aika's death stare. To get out, you know you're walking straight into a trap. Spiked ceilings is the order of the day, but thankfully, there is some tool there to accidentally save you from that fate. Alfonso. Yeah, he barges in, ruining DeLoco's plan, and sets his bull on you once again. I don't know if it's the same Antonio as last time, because that one literally exploded, or Alfonso has so little regard for anything, he just named it the same thing. Who knows, but it's the same kind of boss as last time, not much different except this is gold plated, which certainly helps out his defense. So I beefed up with Ikram and used Vyse as my attacking machine, everyone else in a supporting role, and it's a fairly easy boss fight if you get into a routine. Although I did like to finish him off with Drachma bitch slapping him back to the bullpen. That's always fun. Drachma is a beast at times. With Alfonso crushed by the bull and now at least paralyzed from the waist down, DeLoco has no more patience and sets the ceiling off regardless of whether Alfonso is there or not. But, just in time, Sentime comes to save the day by stopping the trap, allowing you to escape. Thanks! With the priest in your hands, he can't tell you the exact location of Rixis, but he gives you clues to its discovery. You're teleported high up to the mountains to the old world city. Sadly, it's not full of gold like the legend stated, but still, the moon crystal should be here. You're not alone, however. Aside from the monsters, there is a shadowy figure trailing you. Aika thinks it's a ghost, the one thing she's actually scared of. This place is kinda tough. The enemies don't pull any punches, including this giant sloth creature, which gave me a lot of trouble. High defense, counterattacks, gives you confused status, just an all-round pain in the arse. He's almost like a mini-boss despite being a normal enemy. It's cool wandering around here, very atmosphere-laden, kind of how I imagine exploring Machu Picchu as the day dawns with the mist around. They did a good job of imitating that kind of architecture and vibe. You'll eventually get transported even above the clouds, which is quite the scene. And right there, at the very top of the shrine, there's a boss. A giant fat chicken. I think Ho-Ho from Pokemon had a few too many pies and decided to watch Netflix rather than doing some exercise. I know this boss can be difficult, but I accidentally cheesed it by petrifying it with Fina's lunar glyph. Yeah, bizarrely enough, you can petrify some bosses. I think the odds are extremely low, but I got lucky with this one, and it made half the fight an absolute doddle. With Chunky Ho-Ho down, it's time to claim your prize. Someone is spying on you. The spy tells you that now the priest is free, the king can use the moon crystal, which he had all along. And now that both Vyse is busy and Valua is looking for the blue rogues, now is the time for them to summon the Gygas to expel the Valuans from their land. That's a pretty interesting plot twist. You have the oppressed people using the power to set themselves free, but it is a weapon they can't possibly control nor comprehend the magnitude of what they're doing. Out comes Grendel. Grendel is the most disturbing of the Gygas. There's just something so grotesque about his design. It just makes me want to puke. Alfonso fails in his attempt to stop the Gygas and forces the Armada to retreat, but DeLoco is clever enough, kinda, to wipe out the king's ship, the person controlling the Gygus, which would make any sense, but now that he's unconscious, he can't even tell it to stop. It just keeps going by itself, rampaging across the continent. First, you need to take on Diloco, who, by the way, he's got something called a Moonstone Cannon equipped this time. He swapped it out for the Flamethrower. Not impressed. He's still pretty easy, but with him out of the way, you've already got a plan for Grendel. You know that he'll be way too strong to take on normally, so you want to lure him into the valley to make him get stuck, and hopefully starve to death? Do they eat? Do they die of boredom? What are they supposed to do down there? I don't know. This dude is strong, especially when he's all about the attacking. He's like a raging teenager. Like in many ship battles, you have choices you can make about what to do. This can have a drastic effect on what attacks the enemy will do, and also what kind of attacks you can do. Making the wrong choice can be severely punishing and set you back a lot, and it's not always immediately clear what choice you should make. Stand back, get closer. Aim for the legs, aim for the head, attack from the front or from the back. It might be slightly unfair, as it occasionally pulls out the aha moment that you wouldn't expect. Just choose one and keep your fingers crossed, and then remember for the next time you play it. I harpoon cannoned that mother into the valley, and the king thanks you and apologizes. He was just doing what he thought was best to protect his people. Fair enough. It will only take generations for the forest to grow back from all that destruction. He grants you the green moon crystal. Instead of going back the way you came from, Valua escaped from their route, which they erected an iron curtain. Now that's gone, you can get back to Valua more easily. As you're sailing in that direction, you'll bump into another black pirate, Gordo, which I'm pretty sure is a Kirby enemy, like a spike ball. Anyways, as with many of the names here, it's Spanish. Gordo means fat bastard, at least that's what Google tells me. Yeah, he's a bit of a chunker. He's a pirate that only steals food, at least he's got priorities. It's not a ship battle because he doesn't want to risk setting your ship on fire and therefore destroy the food. Why he would think the Little Jack is any kind of gourmet stuff aboard, God only knows, but this boss battle is a little misplaced. Sure, Gordo does play a very small part in a few side quests later on, but when it comes to the main plot, this is a really insignificant meeting. In fact, I'd go as far as to say this boss battle shouldn't happen. It should be optional. Maybe you can bump into him if you want to, but anyways, it's forced because for reasons. I love the Waluigi-esque cooks that accompany him. It's not a difficult fight at all. Despite the seemingly pointlessness of it all, Gordo does give a bit of backstory about Drachma, about why he's out to take down the whale because he wants to avenge his son. Drachma is angry at this reveal, and the others are kinda shocked, but more on that very soon. The plan is to check out the yellow moon crystal in Valua. Maybe things have chilled out over there now, and they won't expect anyone to try and steal it from under their noses. You'll see the desolate, inhospitable landscape that is Valua. It's like living on the friggin' moon, just without the novelty of low gravity. I'd rather live on the moon. As you fly around, you'll come across a Stonehenge looking place, which is where the yellow moon crystal is sealed along with its Gygus. There doesn't seem to be any way to get in, and Valua isn't gonna let you anyways. Soldiers have found you, and it's time to rough them up a bit. Don't worry, there's only 4 of them, which, considering its importance as a location, seems a bit sparse. Well, as they reveal, Valua is planning something big. The soldiers tell you that Valua is planning to take on Nasia, reigniting the old war, and that one of the admirals is hunting down a giant whale that's been causing trouble. This perks up Drachma. It's not easy for a man of his age to get a solid one, but I think this soldier managed it. Well done, matey. He may not have abandoned his whale hunting plans after all. It's still on his mind and perhaps coming back to the forefront again. Will he abandon the team once more? No, because he tells you you're gonna help him. Time to return the favor. Fair enough. The yellow moon crystal is going nowhere for the time being. There might be a massive war about to happen, but hey, whale blubber goes for a top price these days, so let's get hunting. You have a rather touching scene between Vyse and Drachma where neither can sleep, and he tells you why he needs to take down Rachnum for revenge. In his box he has a bunch of feathers. His son used to collect them back when he was a fisherman. His boy helped him out on the ship, and the crew used to call him Little Jack. But one day, along came the whale and destroyed the ship, killing the crew and his son. It is a tragic story, and he needs to settle the score. And Rachnum is here. First, you have to sail around to find him, which is kind of annoying because it really doesn't tell you where to go, you just have to guess. If you go too far away, Drachma shouts at you. The random battles still popping up, that's annoying too. But after 15 minutes of aimlessly flying around the same small spot, you'll have a close call against Rachnam, who is being hunted by the Valuan Armada. First, you have to take down one of the cruisers, which isn't easy by any means, but it's almost a relief compared to the Gygus. Now you have a clear shot at the whale, firing the harpoon cannon into him. But perhaps it was a bit premature since the Valuans are now pumping you with cannon fire and the little Jack is going to be destroyed. Despite Drachma's determination, it's time to abandon ship. As you're doing so, Drachma pushes out your lifeboat, but he stays on board, determined to go down with his ship as long as Rachnam goes down with him. It's quite a shocking moment, but there's no time to process as Ramirez, the new admiral, begins firing on your lifeboats, which I think we all agree is a pretty shitty thing to do. Both lifeboats take hits and Vyse is separated from Aika and Fina. Is this the end for our heroes? Got a long way to go in this video, so the answer is they're probably fine. And yeah, they're fine. The scene then cuts to some beautiful crystal clear water. Well, aside from the wrecked lifeboat in it. Vyse wakes up on a beach on a deserted island. Proper Robinson Crusoe time. Where are you? Well, it's time to look around. Your lifeboat is destroyed and this place is full of trees. But there is a dead body here of a long lost castaway. He's holding half a map, which he probably doesn't need anymore, so yeah, let's take that. And taking a look around, you'll see some of his former lodgings. This dude was here a long as time, apparently living on a bed of cobwebs for some reason, that's creepy. And despite literally just waking up, he decides to go take a nap while thinking about Aika and Fina. I know I always do. The scene then cuts to our two girls waking up in a luxury bed. It's quite funny and gives a rare look at Aika with her hair down. Rather lovely, I'm sure you'll agree. But less likely to kick me in the bollocks. They've been rescued by a blue rogue called Clara, giving them a nice meal, a bed, and a ride to a nearby port. I love the contrast here. You arrive at Nazrad, the capital of Nasia. You've been to Maramba before, but this is the big city. She gives you some money and lets you on your way to try and find your feet, figure out what to do about your situation. This is the one segment in the game where you control Aika instead of Vyse, because it's hard to control him when he's not there. Take a look around Nazrad. It's not the most interesting place despite it being a big capital city. The innkeeper is nice enough to put a tab for you while you find your feet, find some work, and then hopefully find Vyse wherever he may be. Both groups are worried about each other, and yet no one gives a smack about Drachma, not even like a whiff. Children these days, they have no respect for the elderly. They don't care about anybody but themselves. Now it's time to turn into survival mode. Vyse needs to learn how to survive and get off this island. First, the most important aspect of survival, food. He ain't going anywhere on an empty stomach, and it's up to him to hunt some animals. Luckily, the wooded area is nicely populated with grabors, which are only found on this island, and luckily enough, their meat is pretty tasty. So your first task is to hunt them, 15 to be precise, which may seem overkill, and it does drag on a little bit, as it's hard to take them down fast with only one party member, but I found the best way was to use his counter-attack technique, which took them out fairly quickly, because they ain't got no one else to attack, so they're going to attack you, and then you'll attack them back and win. Next up, on the 4th day of his deserted island adventure, you gotta grab some firewood, and then, a few days after that, some moonstones for fuel. These are pretty menial tasks, but I think it's a decent change of pace for the game because up to this point, it's been breakneck action. You've barely had time for a breather. Since that first Valuan raid and meeting Fina, you've fought black pirates, busted your friends out of an impenetrable fortress, you've been in the pyramids, the jungles, you fought 2 Gygus, had ship battles with 3 admiral ships, and you tried to take down an arch whale. Time to press the brakes just a little. This little tangent from the Moon Crystal Hunt is very much needed, and it kind of marks the transition period between the first half of the game and the second half. This is the interlude as such. After a week passes on the island, with the resources he needs, he's finally starting on repairing the lifeboat. I'm just amazed after over a week on the island he's still not grown any facial hair. I know he's only 17, but not even a 5 o'clock shadow? I mean, I've grown a beard just since I started recording this. After working tirelessly, the lifeboat is ready, and he is almost ready to take off, but the day his planned escape, he sees a ship in the distance. Hailing it down, it seems all his efforts building the ship was pointless, but you know, I guess it was character building, as they would say. It taught him a valuable lesson. You're rescued on a much nicer ship by this gentleman, Gilda. What is it with this game naming characters after old European currency? You've got Gilda, which I think is Dutch, Drachma, which is Greek, Centime was French. If I ever make an RPG, I'm naming all my characters after fruit, because Kumquat the Knight makes too much sense. Gilda is a bit of a ladies' man. He's the Han Solo of Skies of Arcadia, but a bit more comical. He's a very competent blue rogue, but comes across as a bit bumbling at times. He's currently escaping the clutches of Clara, who's madly in love with him on an obsessive level. She's a stalker pretty much. And after taking you on board and him laughing at your story, you're on your way to Nazrad. Yeah, the same place where Aika and Fina are. Not that you know that. Gilda accompanies you as a ploy to escape Clara. He plans to lay low while you get your feet. As you enter the inn, you get one of those painful movie moments where the two people searching for each other almost cross paths, but just miss one another. They're within inches of each other, but they don't see. It is infuriating, but in a good way, because you're so desperate for them to meet up. You shout at the screen, and it just shows how invested you are. Aika and Fina bump into an old man. You help him and he gives you an old map? Does that look familiar? He tells you the tale of a legend of a great pirate called Daccat, the greatest pirate ever. He and a man called Gonzalez got the map to this treasure island and split it in half. That Gonzalez was the dead dude Vyse saw on the desert island. Yeah, you know what that means. Aika and Fina have one half, Vyse has another half. The tension builds! With both separated teams deciding to go after the treasure so they can actually get some dosh, you've got yourself a pretty interesting dungeon. After flying to the island, you land on separate areas. Nice coincidence. And being separated means that you both step on a switch at the same time, leading to the door opening. Yeah, this part of the story is just complete coincidence, and could almost never likely happen, but it does make the dungeon a lot of fun, as you keep switching between the two parties to help each other. This is not unique to games, but usually each party is well aware of the other person like doing something somewhere, whereas these two, they have no clue each other's there. Doors seemingly open at random as far as they know, right up until the end of the dungeon where they cross paths. It's actually quite tough, especially if you come slightly unprepared with items for healing. Having just two people, you're at a disadvantage, especially Fina and Aika. Neither are big hitters, more supporting characters, so you do have to be careful. This Pirates Den, I don't even want to consider how they constructed this hundreds of years ago, or why. I guess the dude was rich, but devising something like this seemed like a mighty waste of cash. Plus it leaves like 100 workers knowing where exactly Daccat's island is. I wonder if it's like the Emperor Qin's tomb in China where they murdered all of the laborers so the location wouldn't be found out. Probably trapped them all inside, the cheeky chappies. The boss here, for me, was one of the toughest in the game because it's two bosses in one, two heads that hit really hard, and admittedly it took me out the first 2 times of trying. But playing a bit more tactically on my third try, defensively, carefully, I did eventually overcome it. Thankfully, if you perish to a boss, it lets you try again without having to reload a save. Not that it would be much issue since you always get a save point before the boss, but it's a nice quality of life thingamabob. Being reunited, you are desperate to see what kind of booty awaits. No, there ain't no Beliza in the chest sadly, but a gold coin. Yeah, all along Daccat was taking the piss. However, the real treasure was the teamwork we found along the way. All that other bullshit. We've got a ship to buy! Aside from a coin, which to be fair is worth 20,000 if you sell it, but that's still a bit disappointing. But at least you're all back together now. But wait, do you remember when the Valuan soldier was saying Valua is preparing for an attack on Nicaea? Well, it's happening now. Yeah, they took them by surprise with their brand new engines, allowing them to come from the sky rifts in the north. Nazrad, taken unawares, is destroyed while you are there, and as you're trying to make your escape, you come face to face with Ramirez, the newly appointed general and Galcian's right-hand man. He's a Sephiroth wannabe. He's even been practicing his walking through fire magic trick. You could fight him now, but Fina implores you. Ramirez may look like a Slovakian male model, but he's way too strong to take on right now. You surrender, and you lose your crystals. As Theodora basks in her victory, she demands the pirates executed and Fina brought to her. Her son, Enrique, is kinda pissed at the brutality of his mother. She is proper mental, and you can see the friction between mother and son. Vyse is locked up with Gilda, Aika is locked up alone, and Fina is sent to see the queen. And things are about to get dangerous for Aika. General Vigoro enters her cell and, he gets a bit rapey. He's overly disgusting. He thinks he is the man. So yeah, you want to go help her. But Vyse isn't aware of what's going on. That ain't going to stop him from trying to get away though. Especially with Gilda, who turns out to be a bit of a Jill Valentine. No, he's not a sandwich. He's good at lockpicking. Gilda's crew are aware of what's going on, and they're going to help them make their getaway. It turns out Vigoro is doing his best impression of me when my old girlfriend's dumped my ass. Please don't leave me. Yeah, this ain't a breakup situation though, this is being a creep situation. Put the redhead down and zip up your trousers. It's time to take out the trash. She's 17, which only adds to the list of offences here. The punishment, a good beating. This is the first of a few fights with Vigoro. He's not as tough as he looks, and he goes down fairly quickly. Speaking of going down, this dude has a lockbox on his groin. He's got his dick in a box, and he's locked it up. Yeah, seems everyone knows he's a bit of a deviant. I applaud the balls though. It takes a brave man to walk around showing everyone your tiny little cockbox. I hope he doesn't get too excited, otherwise that'd be a tight squeeze. Okay, the less we think about Vigoro's meat cannon, the better. So, time to leg it out of here so the Claudia, Gilda ship, can rescue you. Just as you leave, Enrique comes up to visit you, but just misses you as you go to the other elevator. You make your way through the wall fortress as the Claudia distracts everyone by attacking it. You even cause chaos yourself by sabotaging one of the cannons and blowing a hole in it. Meanwhile, Fina and Ramirez come face to face. Fina says that they're supposed to be on the same mission, so why is he helping the Empire? It's all very mysterious, but it's clear these two are closer than we are currently made aware of. But with him off to investigate the explosion, it's time to bust out Fina, who seemed confident all along that Vyse and Aika would come to the rescue. She knows all about that swashbuckling spirit by now, the never say die attitude. Now it's time to steal a ship and get out of here, busting out of Valua again. We are just so badass. It's not that simple though, since there's plenty of security in the way, like the good old dodging the spotlight, and of course, it wouldn't be a military facility without having to take on a tank with swords and a boomerang. As you make your way to the docks, you are greeted by Enrique at the top of the list, who insists that you follow him. And if you're looking for a ship, oh boy, you hit the jackpot. A sexy looking battleship is right here for the taking. The Delphinus, Enrique's personal battleship. Still in its prototype stage, but hey, it'll do. And Enrique gives it to you and asks that you kidnap him. He can't stand what the Empire is doing and so wants to help you in any way he can. The prince just became a pirate. And even better news, Enrique stole the crystals back, so you're not at square one anymore. It looks like the massacre at Nazrad really paid off for you. With Vyse at the helm, it's time to take this baby for a spin and blast a hole where the wall is weak. Yeah, you're having a ship battle with a wall. But no problem, since the Delphinus is equipped with a moonstone cannon. Charge that bad boy up and blast a big one. We are free. And we've got a big badass battleship to help us continue our mission of grabbing the moon crystals. And although it's technically Enrique's ship, Vyse is nominated as the captain immediately. Now you're safe and heading away from Valua, you're tasked with checking out the ship. It may look big on the outside, but there's not much to see inside. There's a deck, there's a mess hall, bridge, and the crow's nest. Not much to see, at least when it's crewless, but life will come later. You've just got to find your feet and discover a noise in the bridge. In one of the cabinets, there is a stowaway. Marco, remember him? The street urchin you came across last time you escaped. Well, he's making a run for it too, and he begs you to take him with you. Instead of throwing him overboard like any decent pirate would, you instead decide to take him on as your very first crew member. Because yes, this ship ain't gonna sail itself. Like it kind of is now? But Gilda, before he runs away from Clara once more and leaving your company in the process, he wants to give you 3 pieces of advice. First, you need a crew for the Delphinus. There will be plenty of people out there in Arcadia willing to fight by your side, and you've got to find them. Number 2, you need a base of operations. Only the best pirates have bases, just like your dad. Well, now it's time to step up and provide a place for your crew to rest up and fix your ship. Gilda suggests the island that you were just deserted on. Seems like a good place. And finally, never give up. He lists everything you've accomplished this far, and you're almost proud of yourself for what you've managed to do. Gilda has really become a big brother type figure. I don't mean he's watching your every move and telling you what words you can and cannot speak, but I mean he's looking out for you. He's serious and caring. But it's time to dash before Clara catches up with him. With Vyse alone on the deck, he takes it all in. He's finally a captain. He's basically got the Maserati version of a battleship, and he's about to get a crew. Speaking of which, now you're in full control of the ship, you should head to Crescent Isle to think about setting up a base there. But now, this game has turned into somewhat like Suikoden, where you can recruit characters, and that's what I'm doing first. Just when I thought Skies of Arcadia couldn't get any more awesome, they add recruitment into it. What a beautiful game you are. And while you've been out and about on your adventure, I bet you've already spotted a couple of suspiciously named people who seemed more than just random NPCs. Well, your suspicion is correct, because they're probably recruitable. Now, this isn't exactly like Suikoden. They don't join you in your fight, they play more of a supporting role, adding abilities to your ship during battle. Some of them are passive, others need to be activated and use stamina points. But that's not the point. The point is, they join your crew, you're the captain, and what a power trip it is. There are only 22 of them, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's just yet another tick as to why Skies of Arcadia is a glorious RPG. Sailor's Isle should be your first stop because there's a handful of people there. Obviously the barmaid, the ship can't run without sailors being absolutely arseholed. There'd be a mutiny if the bar was dry. Anyways, the lovely Polly is coming along because she wants to see the world and also try to find her long lost husband. There's Lawrence, the helmsman, and Pinter, the, well, thing. He joins as a delegate, which I think means he's not very useful, but we like having him around. There's plenty more out there. Check all the places you've been so far. Some you can get now, some you'll have to wait until you accomplish more things. But this side quest of sorts was always one of my favorite things about this game. I didn't get them all for this playthrough because, well, I just needed to get the game done. When I played it back in the day and finally got every last one, there was a great sense of accomplishment. I was proud. I'd done something, and seeing the crew on the ship or on the base, which I'll get to later, is just wonderful, just fantastic. Some are really fiendish to actually get, so best of luck getting them all. After you've grabbed a handful of them, it's time to go scout your base, back to Crescent Isle. When you arrive, Gilda was nice enough to give word to a couple of old dudes who will be vital in your crew flourishing. Brabham, the engineer, and Ismail, the builder. One will kit out your ship, one will kit out your island. If this prototype ship is going to make it through the sky rifts, like Valuan Armada, it needs its hull reinforced. Plus buildings, they don't build themselves. You need 100,000 coins in total. This is a bit of a cockblock in the game if you've been playing a certain way, or just blew your money on upgrades and stuff, but if you didn't, then you shouldn't be too far away from that mark by now. Personally, I was close, so I just went to the ruins of Nazrad, checked in some discovery bounties and sold Daccat's coin to the Explorers Guild, and Bob's your uncle, I had the dosh. I can imagine it being annoying for some people, as it can derail the story quite a bit if you went on a spending spree just after getting the Delphinus. After paying the dosh, it's time to decide on a flag design for your crew. Vyse, Aika and Fina each offer one that you can pick. Usually I went with Fina or Vyse back in the day because I was a young boy and pink was diseased or something. So this time, I sucked up my manliness and went with Aika's cat design. It is actually quite adorable. With that decided, Fina reveals a bit more about Ramirez. He's a Silvite just as her. They grew up together as friends, almost like brother and sister. It was originally he who was sent down to retrieve the crystals, but after he went AWOL, she was sent in his stead. Ramirez is a fine warrior with a blade that can cut through anything. He's very, very dangerous. Our next stop is to get the Blue Moon Crystal, located in the legendary kingdom of Yafutoma. No one has connected with them for countless generations due to an impassable dark rift stopping anyone going through. Based on an Asian culture, Aika wildly imagines what they may look like after being told they cover their body in scales for armor and use sticks to eat their food. I love how Kupal is being skewered. Enrique knows of a potential weakness in the dark rift that lies south of Nicaea and near a cape called Esperanza. This took me absolutely ages to find. Bloody hell. Yeah, I've completed the game twice before, but a long time ago, and you're given a hint about where it is, but I swear it is misleading. Even when I was in the right area, the town itself is kind of hidden off a little bit. Esperanza, meaning hope, is an absolutely hopeless, miserable pile of dumpage. It's full of soldiers who lost all meaning in their lives. They failed, often stranded in this dump. Back in my mind, in the day, for some reason I thought this was a town cut off from the outside world. Everyone was stranded here after failing going through the Dark Rift. But no, everyone knows about it, but no one chooses to come here. It's kind of weird how memory can trick you somewhat. Anyways, just look at this place. It's a pathetic piece of sputum full of the unhelpable. But maybe you can get some info about the Dark Rift. Surely some have an experience about it. This town isn't particularly enjoyable to be in, there's not a whole lot here, but I've got to give props to the music. It's sad, it's one of the best pieces in the game. It's actually one of the few that remind me of something you'd find in Final Fantasy. It's a short melody, but sets the point across very, very well. You'll meet the dashing, drunkenly Don in the bar who laughs at you for even considering going through the Dark Rift. This guy, like everyone else here, has given up on life. They have zero hope or ambition anymore. Their will has been sucked away. Everyone who's tried going through has failed. Vyse spits one of his truths, calling them pitiful for wasting their life away feeling sorry for themselves. But there's no time to dwell, as the Armada is on their trail. In search of the lost prince Enrique, Gregorio, the veteran general, is coming to take him home. If Enrique doesn't hand himself over, the Armada will fire on the city tomorrow. Enrique even calls Gregorio uncle, after they were very, very close when he was growing up. Obviously we can't have Enrique leaving, nor can we have the destruction rain upon Esperanza, even though I'm pretty sure some of the miserable gits would welcome the end, so the only option is to take on the Armada ships. Firstly, a cruiser, which doesn't pose much of a problem, should be down in the second round if you focus enough for the Moonstone Cannon to obliterate it. Victory over that shows the sailors on Esperanza starting to cheer you on, like they're watching a football match, which fair enough, I bet they don't get ESPN here. Next up, a battleship. You'll see there's no immediate opportunity to do the Moonstone Cannon, so this fight will be a little longer than the last one. And then finally, it's Gregorio himself and his battering ram of a ship. Yeah, a literal battering ram. If cannons aren't going to do much, how about I just kamikaze into you? This is a dangerous fight, as depending on which options you choose, he can batter you, and it's not always clear as to which one the correct course of action is, but eventually you will be able to catch him with the monstrous Moonstone Cannon and blast him out of the sky. Gregorio is an honourable man, you win, and he wishes you the best on your mission. Gregorio kinda knows his empire's gone to shit, but he won't say anything, he's too loyal for that. And you can see that Esperanza, you've brought life back to the town, showing them what you can achieve even when you're up against it, taking on 3 ships, including an admiral, and then ploughing straight towards the Dark Rift. That is inspirational. They love it! The Dark Rift is a maze area full of tricks to get you lost. In its essence, it's one of those places where there are 2 exit doors, but if you choose the wrong one, you go back to the beginning. Kind of annoying, but they learned something from Ocarina of Time by giving you a hint as to which the correct route is, because the wrong one flashes red ever so subtly. They both look like anuses, but one is recovering from a vindaloo the night before. I hope you didn't just eat. Never eat before watching me. If you don't know that trick, it can be annoying, but I oddly love this place. Despite the seeming madness on the outside, there's a serene feeling to the pockets of calm on the inside. There are shipwrecks with lights on, and these act as treasure chests as such. But there is one ship that actually has a person in it. Like a proper Robinson Crusoe. Vyse landed on a paradise island. This dude landed on an alien planet pretty much. He's obviously delusional, from perhaps a decade alone in this weird, twisted world. And by the way, if you have Polly, the barmaid, equipped to your ship's crew, it turns out this scruffy dude is her long-lost husband. It's sweet, but I personally think she deserves better. Someone like me. Why not? Never mind, many more curvy barmaids are out there. I'm sure I'll find one for me. If you explore this place, it is quite cool. It has some surreal land formations and things going on. It's like you've stepped into a really warped world. But as long as you follow my advice by going through the not burning anus, you'll get to the end fairly quickly. Except for the fact there is a monster lurking, a giant flying eel that hides in the vortex. This is a tense battle, and it's the first one you've had against something that's not a machine or a Gygus. This is just a big ass animal. It's really tough because unlike humans, it is quite clever, popping in and out of the vortex at the worst time possible for us. If it goes inside, your cannons will miss, so you may get a bit frustrated. Once you've disposed of this creature, you'll be out on the other side of the Dark Rift. You've accomplished something no one else has done before. Welcome to Yafutoma Airspace, a place inspired by Asian culture. But it's not an entirely warm welcome, because this place has its own kind of pirates, an ambush from a few ships. You're fighting a very unique kind of vessel, one that gave me quite the worry. This was way tougher than it needed to be, because here in Yafutoma, the ships have a unique ability to go way higher than we've seen any ship go before, meaning you can barely hit them, and they hit you hard with both regular fire and magic, like really hard hitting. I got worried a couple of times that I might actually lose to them, but you've just got to time your attacks, learn when they will raise up, when they will come down. Oddly, perhaps due to my tactical incompetence, this might have been the most difficult ship battle in this game. If you do manage to take them down, then you'll have an easier fight against the captains, 2 twins called Dao and Mao, who are on a mission to collect 1,000 swords for the Tenko, the kind of pirates of these skies. When you defeat them, you see their ship rise high into the sky thanks to the power of the blue moonstones. When you arrive at Yafutoma, you're greeted by a group of locals who are staring at you in disbelief at how weird you look in comparison to them, with a special focus on Aika's bright orange hair. If you have blonde or red hair and you've been to China, you definitely have had this kind of experience before. But not everyone is happy to see you. Some guards want to punish you for invading, not that Aika notices, she's just busy celebrating the fact they arrived here. But anyways, you meet the king, who seems like a cheery old fellow. I love his face. It's clear that there's some snidiness going on in this court with 2 weaselly fellows trying to get you thrown out. But it's time to get on with your mission, and the king tells you the blue moon crystal has been lost to legend, but perhaps hiding in the depths of the local mountain. If you manage to retrieve it, he'll be happy to loan it to you for the time being. Seems like a nice trade-off. When I was a kid, Yafutoma is the place I wanted to live. Beautiful, one with nature, crystal clear water. It feels so fresh and real, and it's one of the things I wanted to do when I got older. I wanted to go to Asia. Because of Dynasty Warriors, I chose China, but I hoped with similar influences, I would get a similar kind of taste in my new life abroad. What I really got was this. Okay, maybe Yafutoma is a little overly idealistic, but I love it anyways. There's nothing too noteworthy about this place aside from the story segments. There's a couple of people to recruit, you can float around a bit in a little boat, and that's about it, but it's just lovely. There are even ducks! Roast them bad boys! Oh, roasted duck is just amazing. Mount Kazai is the next dungeon, and this isn't very long, but it's a bit slow, since you need to wear a diving suit for some parts of it. Here you need to raise the water levels in order to jump down into the bottom safely. So basically, it's Ocarina of Time, but with JRPG random battles. Now I know I've just put everybody off it, but hear me out. The slow-ass walking underwater is a relief because there are no battles underwater at all. Yeah, nothing stopping you in your tracks, so it's not so bad. Half of this dungeon, you're not even fighting. Wonderful. The boss for this dungeon is the most difficult boss in this game, without a doubt, at least for me. Even more difficult than the final bosses. Why the hell this hovering turtle causes issue is with the gimmicks that it has. Firstly, it can heal itself completely, which in my humble belief is cheating. Only I can heal myself. And secondly, half the time, he's got a metal shield on which stops him taking any damage whatsoever. Oh, and thirdly, his defense really high, and oh, fourthly, his magic attacks are strong, and when he attacks you, oh, he can petrify you. That's like 5-6 things. He's got all the hallmarks of a magical pain in the arse. And this fight took me 1 hour to do, as a war of attrition, the longest fight I had in this game. 2 defensive fighters in Aika and Enrique, Fina was healing or trying to petrify him, and Vyse chipping away at his health. Now I know what some of you veterans out there are gonna say. Well, half of you are gonna call me a moron, and the other half will remind me there is a super whooper duper attack that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. But I forgot. Because yeah, if you get your stamina all the way to the top, you can do a crazy attack, which the game doesn't mention. I guess it probably does in the manual, but I only remembered close to the end of the game. Not saying it would have been a lot easier, because you still need to be defensive and heal and such, but it would have made a shorter fight, I think. Oh man, what a marathon that was for me. I was exhausted, and I'm sure all of you are too, if you're still watching now. With the boss out of the way, you'll be able to pick up the gorgeous looking blue moon crystal. And even Fina joins in on their victory celebration this time, which is adorable to see. I love it. This game's so happy. Back in the king's presence, he is delighted you brought it back. Look at his face. Things seem to be going a bit too smoothly, however. In the evening, Muraji, the little runt, threatens to have the moonstone in his possession once he marries the princess and becomes king, which for some reason, she's not keen on a forced marriage, and Enrique, being a gentleman, really sticks up for her. There's obviously some kind of affection right here. A prince and a princess. It's almost like it's meant to be. I love Aika's stare. She doesn't even need to say anything, and Fina just naively looking around in the background, not realizing what's going on. But yes, it turns out the Valuans are here too, especially someone you're familiar with, Beliza. With her and her wily ways, she colludes with the little rat boy here to get up to some mischief. Vigoro is here too. Apparently they got here by traveling west from Valua, at which point they ended up in the east. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they found out that the world is a sphere. Well, it's more like an oblate spheroid, but that'll do. Instead of fighting you, Beliza likes to be a bit more tactical and persuades the court officials to rebel against the king and hand the blue moon crystal to the Valuans. With this news, Princess Moegi runs to tell you and helps you escape via the back palace, shooting high above the clouds where the Valuan ships can't reach you. The only option is to tell her big brother, the Prince of Yafutoma, who is exiled to an island. And fighting your way to the top, he is pissed and wants to do his duty to the kingdom. He's been in charge of the pirates for a while and plans to send them to attack the Valuans. The Delphinus has been captured by the Valuans too, so you've got to get that back at all costs. It could turn the fate of the battle. It's time to take it back pirating style. Trying to captain it is the Weasley Weasel, who's unsurprisingly a bit of a pushover. I even petrified him. Now the Delphinus is back in your hands, it's time to enter the big battle going on. It's your first ship battle with Vigoro, with his massive cannon. As eye-rolling as he may be, you don't want to get hit by a bullet from that. And he's also capable of taking a couple hits from the Moonstone cannon too. But this isn't the toughest fight you'll have, especially compared to the magic Yafutoma ship. In comes Beliza to take you on, but just as that's about to happen, Blueheim rises. As you may have guessed, this Articuno wannabe is the Blue Gygus and it's blowing all the ships away. You've got to take it down before things get too nuts. This is the first Gygus you face with the Delphinus in your hands, and you feel much, much safer. This is a battle to the death. This is not about finding a tactic or a gimmick to take it out. This is pure cannon power. And it will be a long one, especially with Moonstone cannons so few and far between. But now you know Gygus aren't unstoppable after all. The Valuans retreat licking their wounds, and Yafutoma is safe once more. The king is pleased and gifts you the Blue Moon Crystal. The prince is back by his father's side, and you're given some ship engineering plans that can help the Delphinus use blue moonstones to make it fly higher. And even Muegi wants to go with you, become part of your crew, and no doubt get nookie with Enrique. Lucky boy. To get back, you want to check to see if the world really is an oblate spheroid, so you're heading east rather than back through the Dark Rift. And it's true, heading east brings you to Ixtaka, which was the perfect opportunity to pick up a couple of more crew members in the area. Heading back to Crescent Isle, you'll see what's changed over the days that you've been away. You've only gone and got yourself a proper base of operations. Once again, Skies of Arcadia ticks the endorphins that make you feel so happy in the world. If a game has base building in it, I'm happy. It's just like Suikoden. Once again, this is small scale stuff. There's a couple of buildings which can be customized. You can enhance and upgrade little things like shops and stuff, but nothing too much. You just have a place to call home. This is our castle, and I am the king. You feel like a proper boss, like you've accomplished so much in so little time. This is where you'll find all your crew members hanging around when they're not on your ship. Polly is in the restaurant, the fat merchant in the cave, the lookout on top near the command room. The cannoneer is selling ship parts for the time being. It's great and you feel like you've really created a community. But there is one question I have. Remember those Grabors, the food source, the animal that's only on this island? Where are they? You've made an entire species extinct just for this base. I just want to point that out to you, okay? No judgment, you just gotta know. Anyways, we can't rest too much on our laurels since there are 3 more moon crystals we need. The easiest option for now is the purple moon crystal, which lays in the polar south. Again, thought to be mostly inaccessible to people due to harsh, icy rocks blocking the way. Once again, Aika's imagination gets ahead of herself, imagining her and Fina having to chip away the ice from Vyse. A Vysicle! That is a great localization joke. Now the Delphinus has been reinforced, perhaps you can burst through the ice. Now, just to point out, they have not installed the Blue Moonstone engine yet, so you still can't go high or low, but you can burst through icy stuff. Although before we do that, you may see, at this point, your pirate rating in the menu is down to Vyse the Fallen. What gives? What happened to your reputation? Well, if you head to the bounty shop, you'll see that there's someone called Vyse out there robbing people. It's not you, but someone impersonating you. This is a subplot added to the GameCube version, and I know it irks a lot of people because it's an optional side quest, but if you don't do it, you'll always be called Vyse the Fallen, rather than having a grand title. Not that it matters unless you want to do 100%, but it's still not nice to think that everyone is scared of you and there's an impersonator out there. So you feel almost obliged to do it. But it is a funny one, because there's Vyse, Anita, and Fina. 3 scoundrels impersonating your trio. It's time to show them who's the real boss, and if you do so, they promise not to steal again, only to do impersonating performances. And the best thing for you is that you get your proper rank back. I always found this part really funny. This is one of many optional bosses, especially in the Legends version. Personally, for this run I didn't do too many of them, but they can enhance the length of the game quite a bit, and give you a proper challenge if you're looking for trouble. It's not just the fights, but also ship battles too. Even against monsters like this giant Looper, which I kind of obliterated fairly easily. But enough of the optional stuff, because we need to focus. It's time to break the ice. Literally. This ice dungeon is a doddle because it's just one of those quiz type dungeons to prove your worth. Get a few of those right and you'll be in the ice city of Glacia. The upside down town that was built by the Purple Civilization, perfectly preserved as it was protected from the rains of destruction a millennia ago. But where are the people? Well, that will always remain a mystery. I like to think they survived and left the city to populate the world again after destruction. They realize the cold absolutely sucks and never want to go back. This is a linear section as you fight through an unmemorable boss, but you do get to a very misty place. You almost can't see the hand in front of your face, but there is someone there. Drachma! Yeah, he's still alive. This is a really what the hell moment in the game. Why the frig is he carrying a fish? How did he end up in Glacia? This for me is one of the most memorable moments of the game because it just seemed to come out of nowhere and was quite a big reveal for my stupid child brain to comprehend. There's Rachnam, badly wounded from the attack. He's dying. Drachma's ship was pulled all the way here and he's been with him ever since. And, looking up, Rachnam has the purple moon crystal. He is the purple Gygus, a normal whale implanted with the power of the moon crystals. What a twist! Drachma believes that the whale just saved his life and he wanted to watch over him during his last moments. It's one of the saddest moments in the game. As Drachma says goodbye, the whale sheds a tear and passes away. The purple crystal falls down into your hands. Drachma finally, after all these years, gets the peace of mind he's been looking for. Rachnam was a victim too, in a way, roaming the skies with no master to instruct him what to do. He was just a normal whale one day in his young life, but then got transformed by the Purple Civilization. And when they went, he had no one to tell him what to do. You remember the Green Gygus? When the king was knocked out, the Green Gygus went on a rampage. It's not Rachnam's fault. And Drachma says goodbye for good, setting off to spend his final years as a fisherman. Maybe he'll pop over to Crescent Isle one day to say hello. It's a sentimental send-off. You're probably almost in shock because either you thought he was dead or it was so long ago you completely forgot about him. Anyways, it's time to return to the island with the 4th of 6 crystals. Your mission is almost complete. In the meantime, the engineer fellow was able to get his head around the new tech of the Yafutomas, and you can now let the Delphinus fly not only super high in the air, but deeper too. With this new tech, the world is your oyster. There is nowhere you can't reach anymore. So now it's time to go hunting for new discoveries, new crew members, new bounties. Or you could, get on with saving the world or something. That's not important. Oh, and by the way, sailing above or below the clouds will stop enemy encounters so you can sail in peace, finally. So, 2 crystals to go, silver and yellow. Fina reveals the Silvites already have the silver crystal, so the only one we need to worry about is the yellow one, found in Valua. There was no way to break the seal before, but perhaps with our new tech, we can go under the clouds to reach it. I tell you what, this is where the game wasn't very clear at all, or just plain wrong, because Enrique straight up says, look underneath. So then you're fannying about underneath looking pissing everywhere for an opening, when in reality, it's a hole kind of at the side. Not underneath, at the side. That wasted at least half an hour. The Maw of Tartus is where Yeligar, the Yellow Gygus, lays. You have to go through some kind of pointless caves to get there. And when you snag the Yellow Moon Crystal, well, Yeligar gets mega pissed off. He starts going apeshit and blows the seal apart, setting himself free. Why didn't he do that before? Anyways, you could just let him go rampaging about, but that's probably gonna draw a bit of attention to yourself, so take him down fast. By this point, you're probably packing a lot of heat on your ship. You've upgraded your health and armor and cannons, and you should find this pretty easy. Gygus just ain't what they used to be when you were in the Little Jack. This should take less than 10 minutes. With the yellow crystal in your hands, Fina sadly looks up to say her quest is complete. Something tells me she's rather enjoying this adventure and doesn't want it to end. But if you think it's all over, it's not! Cruising back home, you see Gilda waiting for you. Aside from enjoying your stories and your nice meals, he has some information for you. But first, Fina, very sad indeed, tells you where she needs to go. High above the sky where her civilization rose to save themselves from the rains of destruction. There is a conflict of interest here for Fina. She wants to accomplish her mission, but she wants to stay here. But she must do her duty. She needs to get her ship back. Only her ship can fly so high where the Silvites live. Meanwhile, we find out that Galcian may have some more ambitious plans for himself, not only Valua. He wants to reign supreme as the leader. Who'd have thought that? I thought it was just a cozy silver-headed fox, but no, he and Ramirez are going to dominate no matter what. Back here, Gilda tells you of rumors the Empire is planning to go into deep sky, building a ship that can go down into the below and to the real surface of Arcadia, an inhospitable wasteland that no ship has ever gone before, at least not survived. It seems they want Fina's ship too, so you need to get there first. Time to head to a place close to your original home island, Pirate's Isle. Took me a while to find it, but there is some kind of construction happening on a rocky island below the normal depths. This is a secret facility on Dangrel Island. De Loco is getting to work on building a machine to allow them to traverse the depths of the world and hopefully scoop up Fina's ship. It's time to infiltrate and see what the crack is. This is where Galcian announces his plans to the rest of the admirals. He wants to rebel against the Empire and become the big boss man himself. This is shocking to most of them. And also, props to Alfonso, he stands up for the Empress. He's perhaps the dumbest of the bunch because even those against his plans should know to keep stum. Now is not the time to pull your trousers down. But hey, at least he has some balls about it. Only De Loco and Vigoro are straight up for it. For different reasons. Beliza is quiet and Gregorio wants to know his end goal. This is a very mini dungeon where you sneak into the docks and grab the plans for the deep sky vessel. Maybe you can outfit the Delphinus first and grab it before them. You take it and leg it, but not before Galcian spots you and cuts off your escape. This is gonna get tasty. He's even taken his cape off, that means he means business. And just when you think it's over, Uncle Gregorio is here to stand up for what is right. Now that Galcian has finally revealed his true colors, he is just doing his duty to protect the Empire, protect the Prince. What a badass!
Oh, wow.
This guy is a true hero, and he has a true hero's death. He's barely been in the game, but he is an absolute legend. Even Galcian can respect that. He's a monster, but still orders Gregorio's body to be treated with dignity and sent back to Valua with honors. It's one of the very, very few moments Galcian shows any kind of sentimentalism. It's time to make his sacrifice worth it. Get out of here faster than my hair is leaving my head. We've got to use the plans to outfit the Delphinus and retrieve Fina's ship. Enrique says this will be the last time they fly together. He needs to go home. He needs to tell his mother about the betrayal of Galcian. Warn the people of his plans. But first, it's time to descend into the unknown, going so deep even light can't penetrate. It's a pretty epic descent. The wind, the lightning, you even see the outline of buildings. You make it and there is an actual surface. It's almost weird seeing one. But like the surface of my student kitchen sink, it's filled to the brim with grime. You need to use a sonar machine to detect where the ship may be. This is a really unusual minigame, but you can also get some material for crafting one of Vyse's best swords. But eventually, you'll pick up Fina's craft, but not before someone is here to spoil the party. It's De Loco again. He's harpooned you this time around, the saucy git. The gimmick for this battle is there is no Moonstone Cannon. I mean, you can't get behind him. You also can't see what type of attacks he's going to do. You're in the dark, literally you can't see jack. You're just guessing. And this is your third and final fight with De Loco, because this time he cannot recover. His ship sinks further into the deep and it blows up. He is dead. The second admiral to perish. With Fina's ship, you have to take Enrique to Sailor's Island. He wants to hitch a ride to Valua. But before that can happen, we have another side distraction because Baltor wants revenge on you from way early in the game. Remember him? He's got a stronger ship and wants to kick your ass. But you know, the Delphinus is kitted out too, so he shouldn't be too much bother, especially after what you've been through. And so, it's time to genuinely say goodbye to Enrique. He promises this won't be the last time they see him, and he thanks them for the adventure that they had, and they taught him to be a man. He's grown a lot from a seasick prince to a strong, independent pseudo-pirate. We have the stones, we have Fina's ship, we just need to send Fina home. But while the ship is being spruced up, why not have a leaving party to give Fina the right send-off? Everyone is a bit sad that she's leaving, but it is time to have a feast. Even Gilda and Clara are here to celebrate. Fina has loved spending time with you. She's learned so much about the world, and she wants to stay. But before they can even contemplate the future, there's an attack. Crescent Isle is annihilated. The Valuans have found you out. After a skirmish with some ninja soldiers, it's time to take on Ramirez. Here he is, doing his best Sephiroth impression yet again. He wants the crystals over our dead bodies. And here you have an unwinnable fight. You will lose, and you will lose very easily. Ramirez gets the stone. This is the weakest part of the plot for me. All the effort you've done up to this point has been moot. But I guess they needed a way to pull the rug from under your feet to set up an absolutely epic ending. Why does he want the crystals? Not only to control the world, but to destroy it, just like a millennia ago. He wants to call forth the rains of destruction and start the human race from scratch. Every town, every person, gone, sent back to the Stone Age. When he arrived, he saw Valua was searching for the crystals too. He planned to steal them once they were found. But over time, he began to hate humanity, their greed, bigotry, and he wanted to end it more than he wanted to save it. Might I suggest hanging around with some more pleasant people in the world? Anyways, he realized Galcian was also of the same opinion, and together they would destroy the world. There's even a shock reveal that it was in fact the Silvites themselves who called the original rains of destruction upon the world as they saved themselves up high. Even they too hated humanity. They probably watched too many episodes of The Big Bang Theory. Happens to the best of us. They plan on raising the lost continent of Soltis to call forth the destruction, and Ramirez already possesses a silver moon crystal within him. Fina has one too, as do all Silvites. And just as he plans to rip Fina's silver crystal from her body and kill her, someone is here to save the day. Gilda and Clara fire cannons at Ramirez, forcing him to retreat. The island is in ruins. All your hard work gone in a matter of minutes. But thank God the chicks are alright. They blew up everything aside from the chicks. Maybe Ramirez has a heart after all. He's probably vegan. That's something they do. Detonate the nuke as long as the animals are shielded. And there's soy milk in the cafeteria. Despite the odds now firmly out of their favour, Vyse still isn't giving up. This is what I love about him. He's never down, he always believes they can accomplish their goal. They vow to rebuild the island together. They built it once, they can build it a second time. Fina looks down as they try, and she sees the good in humanity. Meanwhile, Galcian can sense something wrong with Beliza. I think we all knew that despite the obvious affection for Galcian, she's not fully on board with this idea of, destroying the world. Despite her saying she has no intention of betraying him, Galcian sends her to Valua, with an excuse that she should lie to the Empress and say Galcian is still loyal. This is Galcian's excuse to send her away and get rid of her for good, knowing full well what he's gonna do. Meanwhile, Fina asks that you accompany her to the Silvites high in the sky. She wants to know the truth about what Ramirez said. We also see Enrique return to his mother and tell her of Galcian's betrayal. Even Alfonso, the absolute turd licker, is there to warn the Empress too, proudly boasting that he is now the first admiral. But the Empress doesn't really listen, and Enrique does the most badass thing ever. He pulls his sword out on his mother. Damn boy! But before he can turn her into Swiss cheese, he's conked on the head by Beliza, who was probably doing him a favour, let's be fair. And after a lot of that exposition, we're off again, using Fina's ship to not only reach the sky, but go into outer bloody space. How are they supposed to be breathing? Let's not ask, but they're going to the goddamn moon pretty much. There's a big object floating around that the Silvites call home. It's a weirdly empty place. You even start upside down, which makes me absolutely nauseous. This is an oddly quiet dungeon. There are no enemies here. I mean, why would there be? Here you're walking upside down all over the place. It's surprisingly difficult to get your bearings, especially for this one particular place where you can't even move the camera at all. It's like you got tank controls. But aside from that, it's peaceful, and you make your way to a large chamber up top. Here you find the Elders. They are so advanced they're practically robots now. I bet Elon had something to do with that. And they're all old as hell. No wonder Fina doesn't want to come back. The place probably smells like stale piss. Fina confronts them. Was the plan all along to destroy Arcadia once again? Was she a tool to be used in their unnecessary genocide? It turns out, yes. It was the Silvites who destroyed Arcadia a millennia ago, thinking they were superior to all other civilizations. They shot themselves to space to protect themselves and annihilated everyone else. You get transported to the Hall of Knowledge. I love how Gilda's just floating around. They tell you that yes, they plan to destroy Arcadia after humanity was turned and twisted into warmongering destroyers who couldn't get along. They created Zelos, their very own Gygas, to wipe them all out, to call down the rains of destruction. They think they were doing the right thing, just as most monsters in history do. That doesn't mean you can sympathize with them, the murdering buggers. And they wanted to do it again. Popping down destroyed the world on your resume is one thing, but doing it twice, first, no one will believe you. Secondly, that's just a cry for attention. Stop attention seeking. Thankfully, Galcian pops in, probably taking a ride on Ramirez's ship, who also pops up and murders the old man. If there's any time to be Swiss, it's right now. A murderous psychopath just killed a murderous psychopath. Put your opinions on the sidelines, it's time to be neutral. And there they have the final moon crystal. They have a full set, a royal flush, as they flush the royal Valuans down the toilet. They are going to raise the Silvite capital of Soltis, which contains Zelos, and lay the smackdown on the world. You've got to beat them to Soltis, so race into Dangrel once more, where they've built an elevator to go all the way down, through to Deep Sky and to the sunken city. But it's not a straight road because there is Vigoro in the way. This time, he has a hand cannon with him, but he's not too hard, except when he launches a missile at one of you and wipes them out. Yeah, he's hard hitting, definitely compensating for something with this, and when he's defeated, he's finally done. He won't be bothering you anymore. Nah, he's not dead, he just can't be arsed. The world's going to shit. Better hang up his uniform and become a pirate. He always was about that booty. You don't need to worry about him anymore, at least you don't have to if you don't want to, because actually it turns out that he is a secret boss after you 100% the game, but he's a pirate this time. Not that I'm going to show you, do it yourself. Oh, by the way, just a little fact to make you throw up in your soup. Did you know that Vigoro was voiced by none other than Charles Martinet, the voice of Super Mario? I've just got an image of Super Mario with his cock in a box. And now you have too. You arrived just a bit too late, especially since they have a guardian to slow you down. Zelos and Soltis are rising. There's a pretty epic set piece as the elevator starts to collapse and you have to outrun it. I've never been tempted to fail it and see what happens. I'm assuming you can't fail, but it's scary nonetheless. With the giant continent above the clouds, you can see that it's neatly connected with the very first dungeon in the game where you retrieve the moonstones. A nice circle. Yeah, that was originally part of Soltis, but it didn't sync with it. And Soltis is now covered in a shield that's impenetrable. The two silver-headed monsters call forth the rains of destruction, destroying Valua. Yeah, this is really going down. The Empress, dead. Alfonso, dead. Almost all the city wiped out. Hundreds, thousands of people gone. Beliza, being as clever as ever, was already on her way out, escaping with the prince. Maybe she didn't know this was going to go down, but she didn't want Enrique locked up. Good timing. She uses her piloting skills to dodge the meteors and somehow survive. What a lady. With no way into Solstice, it's time to go back home to regroup and rethink a plan of action, because things are even more serious now. Thousands of people have just died, and plenty more can follow if they use it again. Everyone is quiet, not able to think of what to do. Without any shred of ideas of how to get to him, get to Galcian, a voice interrupts. Enrique and Beliza return. Beliza gives us hope. Galcian will demand servitude from each of the other kingdoms and will come out of his base to ask them. That is the chance to strike. But how can you possibly take on an entire fleet by yourself, just the Delphinus? Well, it turns out we're not alone.
Hey, boy.
Drachma comes back to bite your ear off for seemingly giving up. You now have all three of your support allies in one room, and he's not the only one coming to your aid. Oh my god, the emotions! They got me good. The everyone is here trope. We're all banding together for the greater good. I can't help but start welling up. You're not alone. These are your friends, people you've helped. Even your enemies are helping you fight an even worse enemy. And you are their captain. It's time to show Galcian that the people of Arcadia, whether they're blue rogues, black pirates, princes from another kingdom, Arcadia will not stand for this bullshit. Pipe down, Galcian. It's not over yet. The night before the big battle, you get a visit from Beliza. Sadly, she's not trying to sneak into your bed, but she tells you that she's leaving. She can't fight her own men. Fair enough. But she tells you to do your best and take care of your crew, especially the two closest to you. You have a tender moment with both Fina and Aika. A sweet moment before the final battle. You feel closer to them, and you probably realize up to this point, there's been no love interest between any of them. It's purely platonic. Good friends, like really good friends. No, more like family. This is the Fast and the Furious of the RPG realm. Are you ready for the final push? I hope so, because this video is going to be more than 3 hours long. This is an epic ending to the game, and there is absolutely no way I can do it justice by showing it in a bite-sized fashion. It is better if you're playing the full thing, but seeing everyone together, ready to take on the most dangerous armada in history, gives you a welling of pride within. All the Valuan ships are the best in class. They've got a giant floating fortress. Ramirez is going to stay behind and protect Solstice, while Galcian deals with the pirate coalition. It's hearts in mouth time. First, a mage battleship, easily down. Then, an elite vessel, not so easily down but not too bad. Moonstone cannon ASAP and pelt it with cannon fire. Done. And now, the flying fortress, Hydra. It's you versus Galcian. You can see from the timeline, there ain't no messing about with this sucker. Just like Coldplay, it's all yellow. Even a Moonstone cannon barely gives it a scratch. I'm not going to say this is a difficult ship battle because, to be frank, none of the ship battles are too difficult once you've kitted out the Delphinus and have enough repair kits to last a lifetime. As long as you manage your health, you can get by. But that doesn't mean they don't take an age to kill. After about 20 minutes, the Hydra is incapacitated and trying to flee from battle. It's time to do this the old-fashioned way. It's raiding time. Galcian's head will roll. We have a mini dungeon, and then it's 1v1. Or 4v1. He's really strong, so that's fair. He comes out to face you like a man. A very ruggedly handsome man with majestic silver hair. Now, what you may be vaguely aware of is that this is the big boss. The final boss. But it's not the final boss. The final boss isn't the final boss. What is going on? Yeah, this tough bugger puts up a damn good fight. He can almost instant KO one person, doing a wonderfully over-the-top attack with great scenery. Poor Aika. Super attacks barely dent him, so you're in for the long run. Oh hey, he also has Eternum, so that's another one-hit KO pretty much. He's clever. He took out the only person who can defend everyone against that kind of magic. It was at this point I was thinking, I'm pretty sure I remember some kind of super duper whooper attack when I played it back in the day. But where was it? I don't know where is it? I'm sure it existed. And then in my hour of need, I remembered. You have to max out your stamina bar, of course. Then the icon appears. Yeah, it's not even blacked out, it's flat out not there until you do it. Oh god, there are two special attacks. My favourite but least useful is the Blue Rose. This is where the crew members you have on your ship at that minute all jump in to contribute something. Some attack, some heal, it's a balance of both. The other one is a full-on attack as our four heroes join forces to unleash a beastly world of pain upon the enemy. I'm glad I remembered before the end of the game, otherwise I'd look like a complete idiot. This makes life a lot easier, although getting the max stamina is a bit of a drag unless you have a very, very rare item that boosts it all the way to the top. With Galcian down, he stumbles back onto the bridge / escape pod, and he makes his getaway, leaving you stranded and him off to regroup. They can't let him get away. This is the only chance. And then, the person who loves Galcian the most.
Goodbye, my love.
What?
God damn it, Skies of Arcadia, why are you so good? Beliza sacrificing herself to wipe out Galcian. It's beautiful, it's tragic, but wonderful. Beliza is one of my favorite characters, and she went out like an absolute boss. Ramirez, he's just as gutted. He's raging at his master's loss, and he's gonna get revenge. The game is not over. You may have taken down the big bad guy, but his lieutenant is still standing. Ramirez is the Sauron to Galcian's Morgoth, which is kinda just as bad. Attempting to activate the Rains of Destruction, there's even more sacrifice. The Silvites are making themselves a meteorite to stop it. Knocking out the shield in the process. God damn it, why is this so epic? I guess it's mildly redeeming, but not entirely. They ended up killing more people, if you're counting. There's no time to dwell though. It is time to get to Soltis and take on Ramirez before any more rains can be called. And this time you can choose Gilda, Enrique, or Drachma to come with you. The final ride. You can choose who's going to be there alongside our trio. I'm sure Drachma would love to pimp slap that pasty boy back to bed, but he's had his trouble. Time for a rest, old man. Enrique, well, he's tactically the most useful, but he's got his lady waiting at home to come back safe to. My man Gilda, it is. He's been adventuring us twice already. He's always been there for us, so let's take him to the final encounter. Or should I say, encounters, because the epicness of Skies of Arcadia does not back down. This is the point of no return. While the world could be destroyed any minute, I believe it's here and now. You can go off to do all the content in the game to get 100%. Just keep that in mind. There's a ship fight before you can even land on the damn thing. Thankfully, it's really easy. Just shoot it and it's down in pretty much one hit. That's a crap drone. Get yourself into Soltis and confront Ramirez. He is mentally unstable at the loss of his master, and he's gonna make you pay. He plays like his master, strong attacks, and can KO certain characters in one hit. This took forever, since he can cast regeneration on himself. Plus, he can take away all of your buffs too, which you seriously need if you want to do any meaningful damage. This is all about keeping your characters up and putting his character down. It's a toing and froing that can make it seem like an eternity, a true battle to the end. It's a very tough fight because of how aggressive he is. He does not let up at all, and keeping every character on their feet is essential to success. But he knew to keep targeting Fina. Aside from the turtle fight, this was the longest of them all. 45 minutes on this battle, so epic. And once he's down, you can finally breathe. At least for a minute, because it's not. No, it's not over yet. He uses his internal silver crystal to summon Zelos, the Silver Gygus. It absorbs him and begins to mutate. The final Gygus battle is commencing. He's turned into the friggin' Death Star. Sadly, there's no time to find plans for a weak vent hole. We've just got to take this thing head on in the final ship battle of the game. I'm not going to sit and pretend this is a hugely difficult fight. It's not. It's just longish, fairly epic, but as I said before, if you're in the Delphinus, you feel safe. You just keep your health up and keep going. It has multiple forms and boy does it hit hard, but thankfully you can stop it with silence magic. A nice treat. About 20 minutes later, Zelos collapses in a metal lump on the deck of the ship. Is it finally over? Of course not! Ramirez emerges from the orb. Now he's some sort of weird alien thing. Can I say, this is such a Dreamcast enemy. This should be in Sonic Adventures. He's similar to before, but he's got one unique trick up his metallic sleeve. He can control one of you to make them attack someone else in the team, with a special attack, but I ain't messing around this time. It's time to put him to bed, so I can go to bed. Using Aura of Valor to boost my stamina and use the super duper attacks, still I only had one. It's still a tough fight, especially when he keeps taking control of Vyse to annihilate Fina. He definitely has a thing against her. This is another long fight, until Gilda pops one last cap in his head and it's done. It is done. That's it, folks. Ramirez sort of evaporates, leaving behind his crystal. I'm not sure why Vyse is giving a bit of respect to Ramirez. Not everyone deserves a respectful send-off. Solstice begins to collapse, and victory is assured. Fina asked Vyse and Aika if she can still sail with them on their next adventure, wherever that may be. Gilda's gonna carry on with the Claudia, Drachma's gonna be a fisherman, and Enrique is going to rebuild Valua. But before then, it is time to party, as the coalition sail off into the sunset together. Absolutely beautiful. I'm the kind of guy who's an easy target for emotional blackmail when it comes to certain media. Movies are the biggest offender. I mean, my wife complains I have the emotional range of a slab of granite. However, put me in front of the ending of a great movie or video game, they've got the key to almost open the floodgates. And even though I've completed Skies of Arcadia twice before, I still started welling up at the ending. Honestly, it was almost midnight, and I was making the last push to get to the end before bed, and it was just perfect. Especially within the limitations of the time. Seeing everyone rebuilding the world, all the major players coming together, a more united world than ever. Nazrad back to its old self, Enrique leading the charge to make Valua great again, seeing the growth of a plant on once infertile soil. It gives a sense of hope for the future. You really feel like you saved the world. And not just saved it, but by getting rid of the moon crystals, you've actually made it better. Seeing Fina dispose of her Silvite garb and swap it for a cute blue rogue outfit as they sail off in their brand new, more piratey themed ship, it's like someone is slicing onions next to you, because yeah, of course they're not going to keep the Delphinus, that belongs to Enrique. And then we have the most emotional gun to the head of them all, the roll call. Oh man, they know me. Suikoden does it, Skies of Arcadia does it, so obviously it's one of my favourite gimmicks. A short snippet of what people were getting up to after the defeat of Zelos. You smile, you cry, you'll probably ugly cry if you played for the first time. I mean, obviously for this playthrough I didn't 100% the game, but two that really hit me in the gut. Drachma, who passed away not long after the war, and Pau, the dog who never went home, always staying by his new master's side. God damn it. The music that plays over the top is incredible. After the 35-hour journey, it's a beautiful distillation of the adventure we've just had. It is epic. It's bittersweet almost, reminiscent. It's over. Done. The ship hasn't sailed, the ship has been docked. What a wonderful music track to play over the credits. One of the best ever in gaming, in my opinion. What a journey. A journey you don't want to end. Well, unless you've got a 35,000 word script to write, then maybe it could have ended sooner, but joking aside, for me, as a kid, someone so enthralled by this world, this adventure, the story, the characters, it was gut-wrenching to say goodbye to them. I personally think most games fail to achieve this feeling. While you may enjoy a game, it's very rare that you want it to last forever. By a certain point in the story, you kind of want things to wrap up so you can move on to something else. There's always more JRPGs out there to play, but Skies of Arcadia is borderline perfection. It's not scientifically perfect, as I'm sure I'll have hinted throughout the story playthrough. It has plenty of quirks and minor complaints, but coming together, it's very easy for me to look past the small issues, and Skies of Arcadia is just a wonderful time from beginning to end. It has absolutely everything I adore in the genre, and then some. And there we have it, Skies of Arcadia, the adventure of a lifetime. It was an incredible adventure back in the year 2000, it was still amazing a few years later on the GameCube, and it's still an incredible adventure 20 years later. Whether I'm 10 years old or 30 years old, I feel just as excited and enthused. I feel brave, I feel dauntless. I am a good guy doing the good thing. Skies of Arcadia was a blast of fresh air in the JRPG world. Back when the genre sphere was edgy, overly serious and trying to be cool, Skies of Arcadia was just effortlessly laid back. A breezy, action-packed, world-spanning, swashbuckling adventure starring a trio of youths on a quest to take on an empire. It has its darker moments, its low points, its seriousness, but Vyse and Aika are never too far away from a smirk to bring their sense of fearless heroism back to the front. They take everything in their stride. Playing Skies, you can almost feel the gust of refreshing wind blowing over you. You know those moments when you stand on the seashore and the salty wind roars away the cobwebs of your soul? That's what it feels like playing Skies of Arcadia. There's a carefree attitude, a spring clean to take away the skid marks of life. Nothing's gonna get you down. Your dad's about to be executed within an impregnable fortress. No problem, let's do this. I love the optimism that threads the game together. The sense of pace is also unerring. The danger is always there, but the team are ready to take it on, and when they do, they're going to be high-fiving along the way. I am what most people in the world would call a miserable bastard. Pretty sure that's down to DNA. But yeah, I am not exactly the kind of guy to giddy up and high-five people. I'd rather punch them in the gut, to be honest, but Skies of Arcadia even brings out that optimism in me. I want to join in on their little fist bumps. When times are down and shit's about to hit the fan, even I preempt Vyse and Aika's enthusiasm by standing up and shouting, "Let's do this!" And then I get all flush and everything. I know you may feel this never-ending confidence may grate, become tiresome over the course of a 40-hour game, but let me tell you, I ain't standing for your pessimism. Your negativity will be in the bin within 5 minutes of the Blue Rogues boarding the Valuan ship. It's the characters, it really is. The game sells them to you so well. Let's start with Vyse. Son of the equally honourable Dine, Vyse starts the game as a fearless, enthusiastic adventurer whose upbringing in the Blue Rogues served him well for the adventure ahead. While he may act goofy at times, he quickly settles into the role of the inspiring leader. At the beginning of the game, there's no real defined leader. If anyone, Drachma is the captain of the crew, allowing the trio of heroes to come along with him. Vyse is on equal footing to Aika, but once he realizes the magnitude of the stakes, he's the one to inspire those around him with the choices you make in the dialogue. He makes great speeches here and there throughout the game, not just one-liners. He's funny, often jumping into the action before even thinking it, but there are times when he can be serious and spit the harsh truths at people, even if it's something they don't want to hear. He's just such a great character to play as. He's one of the reasons silent protagonists don't do much for me. I don't want my persona projected onto the character, I want his persona projected onto me. I want to be as brave and heroic as Vyse. Is he a Mary Sue? I don't know, because I won't deal with the kind of absolute breadbins who bring up that phrase in conversation. It's fine to have a fun, badass character who's a goody two-shoes, okay? Don't label it. It's just a relief that he doesn't have daddy issues or a shady past. You know that age-old RPG trope of the main protagonist having an absolutely banging childhood with lots of bonding time with his family? You know that one, right? What do you mean that doesn't exist? Here in Skies, Aika is a great character, one of the best companions in a JRPG. She is Vyse's equal. She's equally badass, equally brave, but she adds that extra layer of friendliness, of banter and sass. She's also the most overtly funny character of the bunch. Vyse and Fina also have their fair share of humorous moments, but Aika is the most on the nose. I appreciate the fact that she hasn't been designated into a different character trope. It's a brave move to have two main characters the same kind of personality. Usually they would be the quiet stoic type, or maybe the more gentle kind, or even perhaps the mentor type. But no, Vyse and Aika are cut from the same cloth, which I think adds to why there is such a good feeling between the two. I mean, think about it. In your group of friends, you hang around together because you're kind of a similar mindset. You're kind of a similar kind of person. Most RPGs are happy to throw a bunch of misfits together. Everyone has to be unique, especially since things became more animified. Everyone has to stand out, and you end up with a bunch of people who stand at different points of the hexagon. Aika's just your mate. She's your best friend who's your equal. She needs to be rescued one time throughout the game. And that time wasn't anything down to her incompetence or being a side character, it's just because you had more manpower to escape at that time. If it was the other way around, she'd have rescued you. And that was her plan when Vyse was shipwrecked. She's not a damsel in distress. Aika is a very memorable character. Fina is the odd one out of the main trio. I mean, seriously, she's from the friggin' moon. She's a naive girl, not that she's easily led, but that she really doesn't know anything about the modern world. She grew up very isolated along with the other Silvites and their very different way of life. I mean, they're bloody robots. She's actually the perfect exposition dump character because of the knowledge that she has and that she doesn't have. She knows the lore and the history of the moon crystals, the civilizations, the Gygus, everything that Vyse and Aika are blissfully unaware of. But then, she helps the player out by needing the modern world to be explained to her. Vyse and Aika can drop information they are well aware of, but also inform the player of things via Fina, without feeling they're just dumping information. But she is more than that. She's the character in this game who grows the most. In fact, of the main three, she's the only one that actually grows. Yes, Vyse does morph into an inspirational leader, but you always feel like he had that in him. Fina goes from this impeccably genteel soul, a bit scared but resolute about her mission, but in the end she doesn't want to leave. She wants to stay here with her new life, with her new friends. She's even sad when she realizes her mission is coming to a close. She wants to become a pirate. Then there's her complicated relationship with Ramirez. They grew up together. She knows what he's capable of, and there's a reluctance to fight him, even when they must do at all costs. All the internal turmoil is hers. She's the character with the most depth. Even in battle, she definitely has a sense of growth. At the beginning, you may be put into a feeling that she's a bit of a liability. It's not uncommon for her to not make the end of the battle, but by the time you're near the end, she's holding her own against the enemies. With Kupel fully upgraded, she's got a pretty strong weapon, and her super moves are invaluable in terms of support and evening the playing field. She's a great character, and the three together are just perfect. And three main party protagonists is a bit odd. It's not unusual for most RPGs to have like 6 or 7 cast members who join you on your journey, and it can be really hard for them all to have their say during some big moments. Sometimes you need to omit them from the scene or party, which gives them a disconnect. But with Skies of Arcadia, you always have your 3 main characters together, plus the 3 supporting characters who intermittently join up at specific points of the plot before swapping out. This means that everyone in the story gets their chance to properly shine in the right place and the right time. It always confused me as a kid why I couldn't swap party members. Why was it so restricted compared to Final Fantasy 6 or 7? Well, now that I'm a bit older and wiser, I realize it's because they cared about the characters. They wanted to make the most of them within the story. There are no moments of just half a dozen party members standing around awkwardly in the background while the main dude makes a comment. There's nothing superfluous happening with the characters. The supports come and go when the plot is best for them, and they each have a perfect excuse for why they come and go. Yes, it does make it feel like they're not truly part of the crew, more like helpers, but plot-wise, it does a really good job to make the most of everyone. It also helps that each of the supporting characters are different enough from each other, yet all have interesting backgrounds. Drachma is the first companion, and if you're playing for the first time, you will assume he'll be there forever. So it might be a bit of a shock when it appears he may be gone less than halfway through the game, down with his ship. He is the character with the saddest story by far and away, with his troubled past of his crew and son dying at the hands, or perhaps I should say fins, of Rachnam. This is one of the plot points where the game decides it's going to get a bit serious. Yeah, more serious than the potential end of the world. He's the most experienced out of the lot of them, and yet he's also easily the most reckless. He's vengeful to a crazed level, as almost anybody would be. He acts like the father figure, but a very flawed one. He puts the team at risk, even abandons them, but his heart is in the right place. Then there's one of the saddest reveals out there, down in the Ice City as Drachma makes his peace with the giant whale, nursing it as it passes away with a tear. It's a really strong, memorable moment that even made myself well up. It's one of the biggest moments of the game. And then for him to sail off and say goodbye to the crew, that's a tough one. Since you've rediscovered him, one would assume he'd join back up with you, but no, he buggers off until the climax of the game where you can choose to use him or not. And as I said, during the roll call, he has perhaps the entry that will make you come to tears. The fact that he passes away not long after the end of the final battle. Perhaps he had nothing more in life to live for. Rest in peace, Captain. Gilda is the odd one out of the bunch. He's the elder brother type, you know, the one quite a bit older than you that comes home to visit at Christmas and tells you the stories about the escapades he's been getting up to. He's cool, although perhaps not the best influence. He's also the only supporting character who mandatorily helps you twice in the story. Drachma and Enrique join you once before leaving until the very end of the game. It's surprising then that his appearance does have the least impact on the player. Compared to Drachma's tragedy and Enrique's connection to the Valuan Empire, Gilda is definitely the least valuable to the overall plot. He's technically the filler character to make sure our heroes have a full party between Drachma and nabbing the Delphinus. Saying that, he's a cool dude. He's the funniest and coolest of the lot of them. He's the Han Solo of Arcadia, although he'd likely accidentally shoot first. He's priceless in terms of him supposedly being a ladies' man who never actually seems to draw attention from anyone aside from Clara, and his endless need to vacate the same airspace as her is just charming. He technically should be a very unlikable character. He should be the same as Vigoro, but instead he has that cheeky smile rather than that kind of rapey smirk. That can make a difference. I'm also sure he doesn't keep his Todger in a little locked box. Gilda does have an impact though. As they escape Valua for the second time with the Delphinus in their hands, he basically tells Vyse what is exactly needed from here on. How he needs to step up and become the captain of his own crew. He tells you to get people to your side. He tells you to get a base, directing you to Crescent Isle, and he tells you to never give up. That is a fairly big deal. And while he might not be the most memorable cast member, nor the most important in the grand scheme of things, he is a solid character who you feel safe with. He's the big brother who's going to look after you, put his arm around you, and then give you some solid pirating advice before he sprints off after hearing Clara is nearby. I think that might be my biggest disappointment with the ending, to be frank. Clara and Gilda, they should have gotten together. But no, she's still pursuing him, and he's still trying to be a free man. You gotta respect that though. Enrique, the final supporting character, is the one I'd almost consider to be part of the main cast, alongside Vyse, Aika and Fina. I really wouldn't have minded having Enrique standing alongside them. After all, he's the one who's with them for the longest time, even taking into account Gilda's second appearance. Of the bunch, he's the one who has the biggest importance in the story. Drachma and Gilda are just for helping you out in a tight spot. Enrique's appearance is fully loaded. He is the son of the leader of your enemy, at least the original enemy. He is the one who's got the most heart in the fight, the most at stake. He's the one who desperately wants to win the fight against Valua. He's a good guy, almost too nice you'd think. He's the perfect gentleman and only believes in doing the right thing. Perhaps he lacks a bit of depth, but hey, he suits Vyse and Aika well, just wanting to do the right thing, especially for his people. Somehow he's the polar opposite of his mother, who, while a self-righteous pig, it's inferred she wasn't always like that. And when he threatens to actually kill his mother, well, that's pretty insane. That's when he turns gangster. Forget negotiations, it's time to skewer mama. Enrique can see what is going down, and he's very headstrong and clever in how he will combat it, setting up the Blue Rose to commandeer the Delphinus, staging his own kidnap. He's also one of the few characters that has a definite romance aspect to them. Vyse, Aika and Fina, well, the writers were clever enough to keep it all very platonic between them, despite a hug and a cheeky kiss at the end. They know it didn't need to go any further than that. It's actually a good point, and very reminiscent of European history, where in order to stop everyone from murdering everyone else, royal families of different nations would intermarry, which kind of worked up to a point until World War I, where all the inbred cousins thought, feck it, let's just fight anyways. I mean, look at them! One of them was the King of England, one of them the Emperor of Russia, and one of them was the King of Germany. They're all related, so that's pretty cool. It gives hope for a more peaceful Arcadia in the future. Why don't the other nations do it? I'm looking forward to these two getting jiggy with it. Oh yeah. That'll really cement the future. That's 3 great main characters, 3 great supporting characters, but how about the other characters outside the party members? Well, the main ones are the leaders of the continents you visit, but mostly the enemies. The admirals of the Valuan Armada. And while these characters do fit into very specific tropes such as the stoic older general, the crazy scientist, the meathead, but I think Skies still did a great job in making them a big part of the story, not just in a bad guy capacity. There's a real mixture. Not all of them are maniacal douchebags either. Some of them are nice, but just honourable to a fault, supporting the Valuan Empire in their descent into tyrannical destroyers of civilizations. Alfonso is therefore the image of the upper class Valuans, indulging on their unearned positions in life, not fit for purpose. He is here for a more comedic effect and to show the true colours of the Silver Spoon Valuans. He's just a coward for the most part, so much so that I believe he's the only general you don't fight in some capacity, even during ship battles. He runs away or is out of action before you can fight him, or he sets his bull on you instead, as you do. I do enjoy his ending, however, because really, he kinda does the right thing when it comes to it. He does not abandon his queen. In fact, he goes back to warn her about what Galcian is getting up to. Of course, it's not entirely selfless, he mainly does it so he can become the Grand Admiral, but he does outwardly call Galcian a traitor right to his face, which is pretty ballsy for him. But that doesn't entirely redeem his pitiful existence up to this point, as he is crushed alongside his queen when the Rains of Destruction came. De Loco and Vigoro are the only ones who truly side with Galcian in his treachery, and they are the ones you definitely expect. Vigoro is a dumb meathead who just wants to blow stuff up, he probably doesn't even think about it. And De Loco is as deranged as his inventions, there was no chance he was going to come good in the end. The final two are Gregorio, who we see the least of, but to me, he made a massive impression. He's the stoic, experienced one who's been there, done that, loyal to the end for his country and his queen. He's perhaps the only truly honourable general in the game, perhaps an indication of the decline of the Valuan Empire, where the oldest is the only one you can still truly rely on. We see him in Esperanza, but his starring role is allowing the team to escape at Dangrel Island by sacrificing himself in battle with Galcian. What a guy, what a legend. And even though you've not seen him much, that is a lasting impression. You know he is truly the good guy of the generals. Even Galcian, the evil dude who wants to murder everyone, respects him and tells his men to be careful when delivering his body back to Valua. If that was Alfonso, they'd have chucked him over the side of the island. And this is his only moment of weakness that guy has in the whole game. That tells you how big of a thing it is. And finally, there's everyone's favourite, and rightly so, Beliza. Alongside De Loco, she's the one who appears the most frequently. She's also the most complex of the enemies in the game, because even right up to the end, you're never really sure where she stands. She's clever and successful, but she's not brutal in her ways. She manages to briefly get the red and blue moon crystals purely through sneaky methods rather than burning the entire forest down, which was De Loco's method. She is the most successful that you come across, even if you do get the better of her eventually. She's a great character, torn between her love for Galcian and her country, or just doing the right thing in general. She does the right thing, of course she does. Going back to Valua, rescuing Enrique from the Rains with some badass piloting, and then giving some advice to Vyse before the final battle, with a trademark blowing a kiss. And then, just when you think she's played her part, no. She comes in right at the very end to sacrifice herself to finish off Galcian. Oh god, why did she have to do that? She's one of my favourite characters in the game, not just because of that, get your head out of the gutter, but she's just great. She has depth, intrigue, and so many good moments that you just wish she could have survived. But no, of all the admirals in the game, only Vigoro survived because he became a pirate just before the final battle after getting the shit beaten out of him for the umpteenth time. That's perhaps undeserved considering his questionable morals, but perhaps that just goes to show how detached he was from the whole business. He didn't care about the Empire's plans, he didn't care about saving the world, he wasn't on one side or the other and made it out unscathed. And finally, the two other admirals, the two main antagonists, Galcian and his manservant Ramirez. Perhaps the weakest part of the story due to the lack of motive for either of them to want to inflict such horrible things upon the world. Yeah, the Valuan upper class made them sick to the stomach, but really, how about just tank the economy, put them into a recession and, make the population feel the heat on the wallets? Seems to be working in the UK right now, but no, the only way is the apocalypse. Ramirez is perhaps even worse, since Fina tells us he was a nice boy growing up. I struggle to believe he could have been so corrupted as to want to end the world. Yeah, the Legends version of Skies gives more background, but I still think it's not a strong enough excuse. Not that it changes my opinion on the game or anything, I mean, it's no worse than Sephiroth or anything. All I care about is that they're badass, menacing foes that will make me shit my pants when it looks like things are about to get tasty. I do like the fact that the main antagonist isn't the final boss. Galcian's dead, but the fight still goes on, defeating a Gygas and then Ramirez twice, who starts crying at Galcian's loss. Perhaps he was a father figure, or part of me even suspects something a bit more. I don't know what it is, but it made both of them rage against the world. Maybe they just bonded over their magnificent grey hair. I just don't know why the feeling was so strong and the bond so instant. So much so, Ramirez was warped and went against his plans to collect the moon crystals. He goes completely mental when Galcian is killed. I swear there was something more between those two. Although that's some fanfiction for another day. It's not only the characters though. Sure, they're the jam on the toast, but the world in which they live in is strong enough to carry any game. What a world, what a place, what a mythology. Does it make sense? Absolutely not. Why the frig islands are floating in the sky, and where on earth can all these people possibly live when there are about 5 houses in the entire game? It doesn't matter, but the concept is as fascinating as they come. It's a fantasy world I would want to live in, which I bet you can't say about most JRPGs out there. I mean, goddamn Final Fantasy VII is my favourite game of all time, but I wouldn't want to live in that miserable pile of rubble. How about medieval fantasy worlds? No thanks, I could do without the stench. Arcadia, however, I would sure as hell love to live here. Maybe not in Valua, but sailing the skies to different places. Oh man, it would be wonderful. Who wouldn't want to live here? Either hanging out in the taverns with curvy barmaids, exploring the jungles of Ixtaka, or looking at the bazaars of Nazrad. The idea of there being a whole world out there to explore, everything a complete mystery when you first control your ship, it makes the imagination run wild. And while it may seem rather quaint playing it 20 years later, I still can't help but be excited about what lay behind the stone walls, the strong winds, behind the mountains or in the deep below. It's just a great place. I think a couple of more cities wouldn't have gone amiss. It would have been nice if there was like a small settlement in the ice regions. I mean, I remember reading some nonsense retrospective mentioning hints of racism in Skies of Arcadia, so why not make those guys lose their shit and have an Inuit tribe as well? That would have been cool with me. And yeah, I am being serious about certain articles saying Skies of Arcadia promotes stereotypes, which is frankly just weak, because I don't know about you, but seeing all these different cultures, all these different ways of living, different environments, it made me want to travel. It made me want to explore the world, to see these kind of cultures for myself, to learn, to open my mind, meet new people, how different people live, where they live, how they live. If there is ever a game to promote multiculturalism about nations working together, it's goddamn Skies of Arcadia. Just because these people live near sand and these people live in the forest, it doesn't make it racist. Celebrate the variety on show. I did. I got the itch to see the world thanks to Skies of Arcadia. I don't live in my birth country anymore. I have not in 10 years. I moved to the other side of the world with a sense of adventure. Even though I was a socially anxious 22-year-old, but I wanted that sense of adventure that Skies gave me. Seeing the Asian style culture was great. The Zen-like area, the one-to-one with nature, the water, the people. I actually find it funny that one of the Yafutomans mentions Aika's hair color. And I remember thinking that was a dumb comment at the time, but since I moved to China, different hair color fascinates them, absolutely fascinates them, genuinely. If you're blonde, or you're walking around with a blonde person, unless you're in Beijing, Shanghai or Shenzhen, everyone will talk about it, because it's so alien from what they see every day, and it's the same with eye color. Trust me, this is true. Skies is a brilliant celebration of different cultures. Did they consult focus groups about each place that should be represented? Of course not, because it was the year 2000 and Twitter didn't exist. The only thing that could have been enhanced is the final battle. Now don't get me wrong, it's damn perfect when all the groups get together to take on Galcian's Armada, but to add to that togetherness, Nazrad and Ixtaka should have been there too. But of course, the game covers why they're not there, because Nasia just got curb stomped and probably doesn't have any ships to spare, and Ixtaka never had any fighting vessels to begin with, but I'm sure they're there in spirits. And then there's the notion of Sky Pirates themselves. Oh boy, as I mentioned in the main gameplay video, Sky Pirates, or Air Pirates as they're often known, is the coolest of concepts. Pirates are pretty cool, but water is horrible. There's a reason we humans evolved out of water, because it sucks. I hate it. It's all wet and it gets everywhere. So why not take the pirates out of the big blue wet thing and put them in the big blue not wet thing, the sky? It's an amazing concept that has not had the justice it deserves. Media has almost completely ignored the concept because their imagination was exposed to a step further before the sky concept could be given the justice it needed. By which I mean, when the concept of sky pirates came up in novels in the late 1800s, it was cool. But it's like we acknowledged the badassery, but then we decided to go even further, ignore the sky, take them to space. Space pirates have all the loving. And while that is cool, gotta give it props, there's something a bit more retro, something more fantastical about soaring the skies. You just can't get that breeze in space, unless it's a solar wind, at which point you'll be annihilated by radiation. Just look at the intro to Skies. You can't get this feeling with space pirates. Even within movies, not just video games, I guess it's just easier to give the concept of normal pirates and space pirates than it is to make sky pirates somewhat look realistic without it being some CGI nonsense. So I would like to raise a toast, get your rum, or your fruit juice as it was known in the Western version, pour one out for the sky pirates. It deserves some respect and lamentation that we haven't had more of it. I guess if we love this world and all the concept it explores, there's someone who we have to thank the most. No, not the writers, the directors, or producers of Skies of Arcadia. Those guys are great, but they did not imagine this stuff themselves. Because the writer of Skies of Arcadia, Shuntaro Tanaka, let me show you his method of research for writing Skies of Arcadia. Yes, the greatest influence on Skies of Arcadia is the legendary Jules Verne, the absolute godfather of modern science fiction, by which I mean he used to leave severed heads horses in people's beds. Absolute mentalist. But you can see this man's blood seeping through the game whether you read his books or not. You've consumed media that, whether knowingly or not, has been massively influenced by this man's imagination. It's entirely possible that Shuntaro didn't Amazon his works, but Jules' influences are so entrenched it could be a coincidence. He may have been influenced by derivative works, but I doubt it. One of the earliest mentions of sky pirates ever is in Robber the Conqueror, Verne's work from 1886. I cannot find any mention of the concept before then. And that novel includes an airship called the Albatross, the same as Vyse's father's ship. And of course there's influences like Around the World in 80 Days, basically a worldwide trip to different locations and cultures, from Earth to the Moon as you visit the Silvites, journey to the center of the Earth as you deal with giant prehistoric creatures, the Gygus, 20,000 leagues under the sea as you delve into the deep sky. The connections are obvious to anyone who's vaguely heard of the French fella, the man way ahead of his time. Looking back, the sci-fi is incredibly primitive, but transposing that into an RPG adventure with a Japanese twist, badass protagonist, it no longer seems quaint. It's an incredible ode to Jules' work. It's the perfect encapsulation of the pulpy sci-fi era of burgeoning steampunk themes. It's not entirely Jules though, because Shuntaro made equally good work of other public domain titles like Robinson Crusoe, Vyse washed up on Crescent Isle, Moby Dick, what with Drachma being vengeful beyond reason to track down the infamous whale. Which means it's better than Moby Dick. Dick wasn't purple. If he was, I'd advise seeing a medical professional. Not doing that joke again, this is shameful enough. Purple dick joke. As good as a story, the characters, and world are, they need to be wrapped up in some sort of decent gameplay to keep people fully engaged. The battle system in Skies is pretty good. It does its job. I'm not going to sing from the heavens about its genius because even I can't possibly lie that much. It's a battle system that keeps you interested but also plays it safe, even perhaps having some negative points to it, which I'll get to, I'm sure. Most people's issue with the battle system is not the system itself, it's just the frequency of which you'll be looking at it. Especially if you're playing on the original Dreamcast, the random battle frequency is pretty high. Perhaps not any more egregious than many RPGs of the era and before, it's just more bothersome. Because most JRPGs, world maps, serve as a place to just get from A to B. You go from town to town, right? There's nothing really interesting in between, aside from the fights. But when you're flying around Arcadia in a ship, you're more than likely actively trying to accomplish something, either finding discoveries, catching fish, looking for bounty battles, or just trying to find somewhere you're supposed to go in this multi-dimensional environment. I can imagine a lot of people going nuts when you're just trying to do something. However, the GameCube version lowered the frequency, although I tell ya, it's still quite a lot. It's best just to get the white map accessory early on to lower it even more. While I personally don't mind, I think it will be essential for some out there. Don't play the Dreamcast version if you're adverse to random battles. Their frequency coupled with long load times may implode your brain. The system itself though, it has its weaknesses. I do like the stamina bar, it's a normal thing in JRPGs these days. Balancing their use is the biggest task, but you don't want to be so prude as to not use it. You'll want to rely on the special moves to make sure the battles don't last an eternity. And that can especially be the case for battles with ridiculous amounts of enemies popping up, only for them to call in even more allies. I can't remember a JRPG off the top of my head that has this many enemies in one battle, and they can call even more. And by the way, they can be really slow. If you don't wipe them out in the first attack, you'll have to go through all of their animation attacks. It can be slow, and it's another complaint I totally understand. But once you get the attacks such as Aika's Lambda Burst, Fina's Lunar Winds, and Vyse's Rain of Swords, these should be much more bearable. Magic seems unfairly punished in this game. In fact, aside from healing magic, I barely used it. First, it doesn't seem very strong compared to special attacks, and not only does it use magic points, but it also uses stamina as well. Items are far more useful, since they don't require stamina, and can still do an equally commendable job. And healing items are about as cheap as chips. You'll easily max out like 99 inventory without too much of a dent in your pirate booty. Ikerum was really the only magic I relied on consistently, as I think it was necessary to make boss battles, both on land and ship, a quicker experience. Give me the upper hand. And even that, after a certain point it became obsolete after I could get a bunch of glyphs of power, an item that does the same thing but of zero cost to stamina. So I'm not entirely sure what they were thinking with their magic system. I guess if you're not a very cautious player like I was during the day, I used magic quite a lot as a kid, but actually it just made my life more difficult. And yeah, as a kid, I did find this to be a difficult RPG, mainly because I was an idiot and also because I had other RPGs ingrained on my brain. RPG battles should use magic, therefore I use magic. I also neglected the defensive techniques, which are almost vital for surviving in skies. Aika's Delta Shield became a godsend, especially against the more difficult bosses due to it negating magic and even debuffs. I can't imagine, I don't know how I managed to complete this game not only once, but twice and neglecting these options. My issue with that is, it does tend to make Aika feel like a bit of a robot. She's either using Lambda Burst against the random battles or constantly using Delta Shield against the bosses. There's not much in between. She must be bored off her tits. Another quirk of Skies is the colour alignment, where each colour has a good and weak matchup, and it literally makes no sense as to why. Your initial feeling is to associate a colour with an element. Water for blue, okay. So that would be weak against yellow, right? Because that's electric. I've played Pokemon. No, don't be a Gimboid. Look at this type effectiveness chart I found on GameFAQs when I genuinely couldn't figure it out by myself. One triangle, one square, and a third nipple with that silver. It kind of doesn't make much sense, but I'm sure the manual would have stated it, but sadly, it's not something I have in my hand. And even so, even if I did, I still think this could have been ordered a bit better. But I do enjoy the fact that the game rewards you for unleashing your special attack, since your stamina doesn't carry over between battles, so you're free to unleash hell even on small random enemies, which massively helps you get through their frequency, but you are rewarded for having a bit of patience during the boss battles. If you're playing carefully enough on the defense, if you store it up to the max and you got past a certain part of the game, you can choose one of the two ultra super duper whooper attacks, one of which is a full-on massacre, while the other one attacks and heals your team. The boss battles are pretty great though. They are often tests of endurance, but not a complete slog, well, aside from a couple of them perhaps. They provide a good, healthy challenge without being impossible or feeling like you need to grind. And yes, full disclosure, I did not grind a single time in this playthrough, not once. Of course, I didn't run away from any battles either. I've fought every single thing thanks to the rating system, but yet I don't understand where this notion of Skies of Arcadia being grindy came from. If you're tactically on top of things, using defensive magic, making sure you're on the correct color alignment, and making sure you don't waste your stamina on unnecessary things, make sure you have ample health restoratives, it's not a difficult game at all. Bosses can be, like 3 or 4 bosses here can really, take the smeg, but there's often a method to crack or a hurdle to get over before you get into a rhythm, and once you're in that rhythm, it's not too bad. The final bosses are tough, but of course they are. And there's a couple of tough storyline bosses with the twin heads and the turtle, but as long as you've got the right setup and determination, you can do it. And there are so many boss battles, it's a treat, and they're all unique in their attacks and styles, each one having multiple super moves with bespoke animations, and you can tell an absolute ton of work went into creating these bosses. And it's no surprise that there are many optional bosses too, which I'll get back to in a second, but first, there is another kind of battle, one that blew my mind as a kid due to how frigging cool the entire concept was. Ship battles. How goddamn cool was this back in 2000? Ship battles play a major part in the story, and I'm sad to say that I've always seen people very divisive over their inclusion in the game. While there are no soulless people on this planet to say they're not a cool idea, I get that some people just didn't enjoy their slow pace. Well, you're playing a JRPG. Well, it's a minigame that's more of a macro game. Ship v ship battles were mind-blowing to me. Turning Skies into a more of a strategy game, there's just something so immensely cool about ships weaving around trying to get the match of each other. Are there unnecessary animations? Yes. Sometimes the game wants to finish its cool swerving maneuver before moving on to the next round. I guess if you don't have much time to spare, it could grate on you, but I am here to enjoy this adventure. I am here to duke it out in proper pirating action. It wouldn't be a pirating game without ship battles. I would argue that this area of the game is slightly more interesting in the early parts where you're piloting the Little Jack with its dinky little harpoon cannon. You're a rinky-dink shipping vessel going against warships and ancient giant weapons and somehow coming out on top, mostly down to your intuition rather than pure firepower. Finding different ways to come out on top, it is a good feeling. But then there's a huge dopamine hit of getting the Delphinus, the sheer realization of what's just gone on when you escape Valua a second time is just incredible. It's an oh shit moment as you pilot this high-tech battle cruiser and blast a hole in the Valuan gate. You are totally badass, and don't get me wrong, I love kicking absolute arse in this beauty, but from this point on, you feel way safer and you become overly confident in your abilities, and it does give less tension to the battles. You always feel like you're gonna win. Even when the final Gygas Zealous pumps out tens of thousands of damage points per blast, you are so kitted out, experienced, that you won't even need to be sweating. Not that it's not good or fun, but it's just less emotionally rewarding. I love how the ships are considered its own character, with its own equipment and upgradable health points, and there's definitely a big reward for going out of your way to recruit crew members, with both their passive effects as well as their usable abilities in the midst of battle. Admittedly, I didn't use them a whole lot in this playthrough. I didn't feel the need to at the end of the day, but I remember using them a lot when I was a kid. It's the main reason I wanted to get the full crew, just to see how they'd affect my ship. My favourite ship battle has to be the Yafutoma spell ship because it's the one time I felt genuinely worried while piloting the Delphinus. This is what you call underestimating your enemy. I see a rinky-dink fishing boat and I see it exploding within one round. But no, the game uses a clever plotline mechanic for the Yafutomans being able to reach higher altitudes than you, down to the power of their local moonstone. So when you're missing half the time and they're blasting you with spell after spell, I did feel a tightening of my arse cheeks and my face cheeks from potential blushing of losing to such a seemingly simple foe. I know it's weird, but I kinda wish there were more battles with your ship. In the story segments at least, it would have been cool to go toe to toe with Alfonso at some point and maybe even Ramirez's ship. I shouldn't complain since there are a plethora of ship battles and plenty of optional ones too. I'm just being greedy. I love them. I love the strategy. I love the guesswork. I like it when enemies throw some kind of curveball at you, like dipping into the dark vortex, ramming into you, climbing high into the sky. With only 4 actions per turn, not much stamina to go around, you've got yourself a very tactical time. I totally accept some people may find them slow, but I find them awesome. Crescent Isle is another thing I love, and another thing that I wish there could have been a little bit more meat to. Don't get me wrong, the instant I found out I have my own base where all my crew members hole up, flashbacks of another love of mine, Suikoden, came to the forefront. If you followed my musings over on Switchwatch or on this channel, briefly, you'll know that I'm an absolute sucker for base building. If you give me a JRPG that has base building for your team that grows and is potentially customizable, it's an instant point added to the score. Some games do it better than others, and while Skies of Arcadia doesn't compete with Suikoden, the fact that it has anything just like this is instant bliss. It's just yet another notch on its belt for being almost the perfect JRPG. Yeah, it's pretty small, there's just a few buildings, customization is fairly limited, but the size is in keeping with the rest of Sky's locations. The fact that there is minimal customization is just a bonus. There didn't need to be, but there is. Skies of Arcadia presents so much content, so much of it is optional too, whether it be finding the moonfish for Maria's pet, finding all the discoveries that littered the world, the crew members for your ship, or even just the amount of optional bosses that were added to this Legends version of the game. It's kinda crazy in my opinion. Now I'll freely admit I didn't 100% the game this time, not because I wouldn't want to, it's just that, I have to make this video, we're like 3 hours in already. But there's some rather intricate mechanics and requirements within the game that can shape whether or not you can get 100% completion. Getting Vyse's most prestigious weapon, the Skyfang. It's actually surprisingly complicated and easy to balls up. Basically, you need to have your pirate ranking at the very top. You start off very lowly regarded in the pirating world, but the more you accomplish, the further in the story you get, the more people will start to respect you. You need to rank up all the way to Vyse the Legend, which consists of getting all the discoveries, recruiting all of the characters for your crew. You need to find at least 90% of the treasure chests, many of which are missable in dungeons by the way. Complete all pirate bounties, which is an effort in itself because you need to get all the moonfish. Kill 2,500 enemies, and basically do everything in this game. You catch like a million fish, not a million fish, maybe like 100 fish. And when you get the title Vyse of Legend, you can access 3 secret things. The top weapon, a new discovery, and even have one more final super secret boss battle against none other than Vigoro, who's become a sky pirate. There is a lot going on in Skies of Arcadia, so many optional things, and while I don't recommend you try to do everything on your first playthrough, because really, you want to be playing casually so the story has some decent pacing to it. However, on the second playthrough, or if you save just a bit prior to the final assault, definitely explore every inch this world has to offer. Make sure to grab every crew member, build up Crescent Isle to be a pirate haven, take down all the bosses, and be sure to nab every chest in every dungeon and every moonfish. Skies of Arcadia is a legendary game, therefore Vyse deserves to be called a legend. You've got to do it sometime. Moving on to the production of the game, firstly the soundtrack. Skies of Arcadia, the soundtrack is pretty great. I've always loved the music that's accompanied the adventure. It's some of the best fitting music around. It gives you that huge heroic feeling that's present throughout the whole game story. The game is filled with great music, music that wells something in my heart. The adventurous spirit wanting to burst out. Don't even get me started on the opening theme because guys, that's enough to bring any grown-ass man to tears. Yeah, if you played Skies of Arcadia 20 years ago and you hear this, let me grab a tissue for you. The ending staff roll is just glorious and each character's themes are great, especially Fina's theme, which sounds a bit Zelda-ish, feels like something you'd hear in the Temple of Time, or Zelda herself. Really wonderful soundtrack overall, even if there is definitely a bunch of compression going on in the GameCube version. The Dreamcast version sounds a lot better, but that's a minor point. Playing the GameCube version didn't hurt my ears or anything. The Legends upgrade is definitely the best way to play, aside from the minor audio compression. As Skies of Arcadia released in the year 2000 on the Dreamcast, the original visual presentation would have been fairly well received. Final Fantasy IX released in the same year, and although one used full 3D while another pre-rendered backgrounds, Skies clearly trumped what Square was doing on the outdated PS1. Grandia 2 also released this year on the Dreamcast, and while it may be up to opinion, it doesn't look close to as good as Skies. Back in 2000, this was a pretty great looking game, especially for the size and scope of what it was going for. Large landscapes, so many airships and characters, big background vistas. On a HD TV these days you can pretty much see the string, glue stick and sellotape keeping it all together, but back in the day this was great. And the direction, the direction of the cutscenes is magnificent. You can see all the effort they put into it. They put their heart and soul into making this the greatest JRPG ever. However, fast forward to 2003 when the GameCube version hit the West. Perhaps times had moved on, with games like Final Fantasy X taking it to task. It was much harder to impress at that time. Looking at it now, sure it looks fine if you're in the right frame of mind, but definitely it could do with some treatment in terms of textures. The fact that I'm emulating it right now probably doesn't show the game in its true light. As you can see, there's some slight texture loading issues. I don't remember that in the original game. And this was more likely looking pretty swell on a CRT, rather than on a high-res screen that shows every wrinkle. But it's not all about the horsepower of the visuals. I have to 100% commend the art style, utterly fantastic. I love the designs of everything in this game, from the iconic main characters, the Valuan soldiers with their beakish helmets, the monsters, great. Yeah, they do that JRPG thing where they repackage a monster, just change the colour and pretend it's something new, but not often. There is a large variety of unique enemies in here too. It's one of the few JRPGs I can't make that complaint about. Sure, there are endless Valuan soldiers, but they're all different in some way. They're not just a colour change. The main praise has to be the ship designs. I'm absolutely in love with the ship designs in this game. Not necessarily the pirate ships, I mean they're cool and all, but the Valuan Armada is sexy on my eyeballs. It's not often I get seduced by fascist dictatorships, but when I do, it's because they've got sexy airships. I love the designs of their ships. There's something so wonderful about their chunky cannons. It reminds me of something Studio Ghibli would do. Perhaps it's a standard anime thing, I don't know, and I don't care. All I care about is how great they look. Even the small warships are adorable. I don't buy figurines or models because I ain't got the space or money, but I would 100% buy a Valuan battleship model if I was given the chance. Of course, the boss ships are also great too, each unique and menacing in their own way, some more ridiculous than others, some slightly boring, and by some I mean the Lynx. I love Belisa, but compared to like her colleagues, her ship's just boring. The Delphinus is just iconic as well. Not very piratey, but if you've got a world to save, you need to take what you can get. Again, I'd buy the living hell out of a model of the Delphinus, especially the one that's in the meeting room on Crescent Island. That looks even more awesome than in the version you fly. After Skies of Arcadia released, it was met with critical acclaim from both magazines of the time, and I would guess players as well. I don't think I've seen anyone say they dislike Skies of Arcadia, although some may be less enthusiastic about it as I am. Unfortunately, despite that, sales were not good on the failing Dreamcast. When Sega jumped ship to be a third-party developer, they wanted to get some cash back and develop the GameCube version in 2002 and 3, which is what I played for this video. There was a PlayStation 2 version in development, but for whatever insane reason, it was cancelled. After that, the sun set on Arcadia, a one-game wonder, no sequels. But you know what? Skies of Arcadia does not need a sequel. We had an adventure, we saved the world, we united all the nations, we got a happy ending, and a sequel would very easily ruin that. At least a direct sequel. Of course, we all want to spend more time with Vyse, Aika and Fina, but their story is over. We've explored the entire world. They can live in peace now. We don't need to rock the boat anymore. Skies of Arcadia had a perfect story that ended on the right note. I don't want it to be like the Star Wars sequels where they negated any point of the original trilogy. In fact, they made the original trilogy look like a bad thing, since what came after was worse as a result of their actions. I wouldn't want that kind of thing on our trio. You can't diminish this story and the events that unfolded. Sure, you could have a pseudo-sequel in a different world with different characters, but where do you go from here? We may want it, but it's not necessary. Some things just don't need sequels. A remake though, well, that's a whole other question, and something I wish Sega would humor. Skies may have been forgotten by many a Sega executive, but its memory still lives on in little snippets here and there. Mostly from the Valkyria Chronicles games from the same team, our trio of heroes make cameo appearances as playable characters, but the greatest love letter can be found in the wonderful kart racer Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. Aside from just being a really great game, it also contains a racetrack that will make any overly emotional Skies of Arcadia fan come to tears. The racetrack dedicated to Skies of Arcadia is kind of like the moment when I saw the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer. Awash with feelings, mostly awe, a childlike excitement as you race through the Blue Rose hideout, which is being pelted by the Valuan Armada, and you see the battle evolve around you as the pirates repel the offensive, and you're just a kid in a planetarium observing the utter spectacle going on above you. It's so emotional and so very, very evocative of the swashbuckling underdog vibe. You don't see any characters, but you can feel the heroism. You can imagine all the pirates bearing a determined grin, rushing to their battle stations to take down the Valuan ships. It's just wonderful. When Transformed originally released, I read an article somewhere that said when one of the directors of Skies of Arcadia, Shuntaro Tanaka, was presented a viewing of the Rogue's Landing, he started crying because it captured the feeling of the game so perfectly. I took this as a bit of exaggeration. I did buy Transform purely because I wanted to support Skies of Arcadia, but I will freely admit, when I played Rogue's Landing for the first time, seeing the track evolve with an unbelievable climax of a final lap, it did make me cry. It's wonderful. The game as a whole is pretty great, but it was worth the price of admission for that one magical trip around this reimagining of Pirate's Isle in HD. And it's this one like 3-minute track, this minor cameo appearance that makes me believe Skies of Arcadia, a remake, would be well warranted. Seeing how dynamic it was, seeing the scope, the higher poly models, they don't need to go further than that. The graphical fidelity here is enough for a Skies of Arcadia remake this day and age. It can happen, but considering Skies is more of a cult classic, perhaps that would be too much for Sega to risk. I suspect the most we will get is a HD port or slight remaster rather than a full-blown remake, and I guess that would be fine. It's the least it deserves, no less, because getting a legit copy of this game is not cheap. You're looking at hundreds of dollars for an English version, both on the Dreamcast and Gamecube. Sega needs to release this elsewhere, because as I pontificated this entire video, people deserve to play it. Whether it will still give that same feeling it did to me when I was 11 or 12 or whatever, maybe not, but it deserves attention. Come on Sega, you can do it. After playing this game for the umpteenth time and completing it for the third time, I was a little bit worried about what I would think. Nostalgia can be a force for good and for bad. Part of me was a little worried that my prepubescent moronic brain was overexcited about potentially shallow JRPG, and by shallow my equally moronic brain equated that to being a happy-go-lucky adventure, because apparently to have depth you need to be a miserable bastard, which is obviously nonsense because I'm a miserable bastard and I have all the depth of a latrine, including those little cleaning cubes. And I have to say my nostalgia was wrong. I wrongly thought that Skies of Arcadia was one of my favorite games of all time. No, that's wrong, because I found out that Skies of Arcadia is my favorite game of all time. At least jointly. I had to contemplate long and hard about this because Final Fantasy VII, I have always thought that to be unquestionably, unreachably number one. But Skies of Arcadia awakens something else within. It's different, but equally important. My heart will always be Final Fantasy VII, but my brain is telling me Skies of Arcadia. They are joint number one. And I would like to thank my Patreon supporters for voting for Skies of Arcadia, so I could finally figure this out. It's perhaps a first world contemplation, but really, it's a game that shaped who I am. It inspired my taste for adventure. It fueled my shy, anxiety-filled 22-year-old body to jump on a plane and move to a country where I didn't know the language. I didn't know anyone. I had no money. But for God's sake, just suck it up and do it. Be adventurous. Do something with your life. Don't stay in a council estate for the 5th generation in a row. I wanted to explore the world because Skies of Arcadia gave me that taste for different cultures. And I'm glad I could finally rest Skies of Arcadia as my favorite game. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting me. It's what you do, right? Yes, I make these videos for you, so yeah, thank you ever so much. These videos are not monetized as of yet. I'm hoping this video will push it over the edge. If it doesn't, that's a big failure. But yeah, also a big shout out to my executive super duper producer, LS4. What a legend, thank you. If you want to join the Patreon, I would greatly appreciate it. You get early access to this video. Depending on your tier, you can also vote for which content I create. I'm not doing a vote for the main video this time because I've already settled on what it's going to be. But they are going to be voting for the bonus video that accompanies it. Because yeah, Patreon supporters get a whole bonus video for every big video I make. I mentioned in the intro, this episode's bonus video is Deep Fear. And it's ready to watch right now on patreon.com/abitmorejordan. Plus I also want to thank you watching right now. Well, if you made it through this absolute beastly video, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you did, I want to know who you are. So in the comments, please leave me a dolphin emoji in the comments, in honor of the Delphinus, the Latin name for the dolphin, and an emulator I play Skies of Arcadia on because, yeah, I sold both my Dreamcast and Gamecube versions when I was incredibly poor. And what's next for A Bit More Jordan? Well, let's just say that the recent announcement of Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster got me all tickly in the right places. So yeah, a bit earlier than I thought, Suikoden 2 is coming. But for now, a quick trailer of the bonus video for Deep Fear. Hello my dear patrons, this video is for you, if you watch it. Now, I say this pretty much every time, but when deciding the bonus video for Skies of Arcadia, it was really difficult. It's kind of like rummaging down the back of the sofa for the TV remote. You find all sorts of crap, but very rarely the thing that you want. Never mind, I did find something I kind of want. Out of the two potential options, my Patreon producers chose Deep Fear. Why Deep Fear and what is it? Well, I'm here to tell you. Deep Fear was a late Sega Saturn game developed by Sega themselves, released in the summer of '98, barely a few months before the Dreamcast launched in Japan. In fact, it launched in Europe first, which is an indicator that this was made firmly with a Western audience in mind. It's a survival horror game. It's Resident Evil, made by Sega, on the Saturn. Did you know this? I didn't, and I bet many of you out there didn't too. Not only was the Saturn dead, its corpse was protruding from the poorly dug grave. You need at least 6 feet, amateur murderers out there. Put in the extra effort, you're more likely to get away with it. And this didn't even come out in North America, which as we all know is the be-all and end-all of the video game zeitgeist. So obviously, not many talked about this one, but I find it fascinating that of all companies, if one of them was going to cough up a Resident Evil, I'd love to see Sega's take on it. This game was produced by Reiko Kodama, who was also the producer for Skies of Arcadia. That's where the very tenuous link comes in. To be honest, I just wanted to play Deep Fear, and I'm so glad my producers wanted me to. Thank you. This is an old school survival horror game set deep down in the Pacific Ocean. Deep Fear, you get it? Now, as always with these videos, I tend to play for around like 3 or 4 hours, and the story up to that point has been beautiful, grade A schlock. You are John Mayer, which is only one letter away from a former British Prime Minister, which, to be fair, I would love it if John Major was the protagonist in this game. He'd be far more interesting and charismatic than this beige plank we have here. John is a new boy working as part of a team in The Big Table, which is even bigger than Putin's table, believe it or not. This is a research facility / naval refueling base. I guess the budget is a bit tight to have them separate, but anyways, remember that monkey they shot into space 40 years ago? Well, he's back with a vengeance.